Please like, share, and subscribe. Wishing you happiness and good luck every day.
Today, we're diving into a really powerful idea from Grant Cardone's book, Sell or Be Sold. And trust me, this is a mindset that applies to absolutely everyone, not just people in sales. It could totally change how you look at your career, your relationships, your whole life, really. Cardone kicks things off with this total reality check. You're either selling something or someone is selling you. Just think about that for a second. Every single conversation, every negotiation, it's all an exchange of influence. One person is persuading the other. There are literally no exceptions. So, here's how we're going to break this all down. First up, we'll get into this idea that everyone, and I mean everyone, is in sales. Then, we'll redefine what a commission really is, see what separates the pros from the amateurs, and get why selling yourself is the most critical step. We'll also bust that huge myth about price, and finally, we'll pull it all together into a blueprint for getting your way.
Okay, first things first, we have to embrace a core truth. Selling isn't some career choice you make. Nope, it's a fundamental part of being human. Your ability to persuade someone, well, it impacts every single part of your life. Let's be super clear on what we mean by selling, because it's not about being slick or pushy or dishonest. Not at all. The actual definition is just persuading or influencing another person. That's it. Whether you're debating, negotiating, or just trying to get someone to agree with you, you are selling. So, let's make this personal for you. Just think back over the last few days. When did you try to convince someone of something? I'm willing to bet it was a lot more recent than you might think.
I mean, think about it. Did you convince your friends to see the movie you wanted to see? That was a sale. Did you get your kids to finally do their homework? Also a sale. Asking for that raise, negotiating a better deal on a car, getting your partner excited about that vacation you want to take. Yep, it is all selling. We are doing it constantly.
Now, if every single act of persuasion is a sale, then we need to totally rethink what we're getting paid, right? It is definitely time to redefine the idea of a commission.
Cardone makes a really bold claim here. Your entire life is a commission. He's saying there's no guaranteed salary in life. Everything you achieve, every goal you hit, is a direct payment, a commission for your effort and your ability to persuade.
You see, a commission isn't just a paycheck. It's getting recognition for a job well done. It's that promotion at work. It's making new friends, or just the feeling of happiness and confidence you get from a win. Cardone even argues that true love is the ultimate commission for selling someone on the idea of building a life with you.
Okay, so if we're all in sales, how do we get great at it? Well, it all starts with understanding the massive difference between being an amateur and being a professional.
The amateur, well, they treat persuasion like a hobby and just kind of hope for the best. But the professional? No way. They devote themselves completely to mastering their craft. They don't just hope for results. They learn to predict the outcomes because they know exactly what they're doing.
All right, before you can ever hope to persuade another person, there's one critical sale you absolutely must make first. And this is the make or break point for any and all influence. And here it is, the golden rule. Your conviction is the pitch. If you are not 100% fanatically convinced that what you're offering is the absolute best option, you will never, ever convince anybody else.
So here's the real gut check. Would you buy what you're selling? Would you put your own money into it? Would you recommend it to your own mother? If there's even a little bit of hesitation there, you haven't sold yourself yet. And if you're not sold, you have almost no chance of selling anyone else.
Now let's tackle the biggest misconception out there, the one that holds so many people back, this idea that every objection is about price.
Most people think sales are lost because of the price tag, but that's a total myth. The thing they say might be price, but the real reason they say no is almost always a lack of confidence. Confidence that your solution is actually the right one for them.
This is what is really going on inside their head. When they say, it's over my budget, what they're actually thinking is, am I about to make a huge mistake? You have to remember, a buyer would always rather pay more and make the right decision than pay less and make a bad one. Your job isn't to lower the price. Your job is to build their confidence.
So, let's bring all this home. How do we take these powerful concepts and turn them into a simple, actionable blueprint that you can use for success in pretty much any situation?
The path is actually really simple. First, you have to commit 100%. Stop dabbling and go all in.
Second, sell yourself first by building that unshakable, unreasonable conviction. And third, sell the solution. Focus on building their confidence in the outcome, not on arguing about the price.
And that brings us right back to the very beginning. Every interaction is a sale. So, the next time you find yourself trying to persuade or negotiate or convince someone of something, remember that you have a choice. The only question is, in that moment, will you be the one selling or will you be the one who gets sold?
You know, there's this idea that everything you want in life, every single goal you're trying to hit, it all comes down to just one skill. Sounds pretty wild, right? Well, that's the powerful idea at the heart of Grant Cardone's Sell or Be Sold, and that's exactly what we're going to dig into today. So let me just ask you right now, do you think of yourself as a salesperson? My guess is probably not. For most of us, that word, salesperson, it kind of makes you cringe a little, doesn't it? Well, here's the thing. The author of this book, he would completely disagree with you. He'd say that, yeah, you are a salesperson. In fact, you've been selling your entire life, probably without even realizing it. Now, to really get what he means by that, you have to kind of shift your thinking. The book's whole point is that selling isn't some job. It's not a 9-to-5 thing. It's just a way of life. And listen, the author doesn't mess around here. He puts the stakes super high. We're not just talking about getting a promotion. He's basically saying your ability to sell, to persuade, to get people on your side, that is what determines how well you survive. Yeah, it's that big of a deal. Okay, think about business for a second. We always hear that businesses fail because they run out of cash, right? But Cardone says, no, that's just a symptom. The real reason they fail, it's because they didn't sell their idea well enough or fast enough. All right, so if we're all doing it, then what does selling actually mean? Because clearly it's not what we think it is. We've got to redefine this whole word. So let's go back to basics. The actual dictionary definition of selling is just persuading or influencing someone. That's it. Notice what's not in there. There's no mention of money or products or, that cheesy salesperson image we all have in our heads. And this is where it all starts to make sense. I mean, think about your own life. Trying to get a bank to give you a loan, you're selling them on your reliability. Trying to convince your friends to see the movie you want to see, yep, that's selling. Debating politics with your family, you're selling your point of view. Even something as simple as negotiating a lane change in traffic, or getting your kid to please just do their homework, or getting someone you're into to go out with you, it's all selling. See, in pretty much any situation where you're trying to influence the outcome, you are selling, period. Okay, I know what you might be thinking. All right, I get it, it's about persuasion, but I don't work on commission. I get a steady paycheck. Well, the book has a pretty radical idea about that too. It says everyone works on commission. And this is another one of those mind-bending ideas. The point is, there's no guaranteed salary in life. Everything good you get, everything, is a commission. It's a payout for the effort you put in to persuade, to influence, to sell. It's something you earn, not something you're just handed. And we're not just talking about money here. Think about the commissions of life. That pat on the back you get for a job well done, that's a commission. Making new friends, building great relationships, that's a commission too. Even that feeling of confidence you get when things go your way, that's your commission. Heck, selling yourself on eating right and going to the gym to get healthy, that's a commission. And the biggest one of all, according to the book, finding true love, that's the ultimate commission. So if selling is this amazing, fundamental life skill, why does it have such a terrible reputation? Why do we all cringe when we hear it? Well, the author has an answer for that. He says it's because we've all been fed a bunch of what he calls false data. So what's false data? It's basically misinformation that sounds true. It's like those things you hear over and over again until you just start to believe them, even if you've never seen any proof yourself. It's just accepted as fact. Here's a great example from the book. People would always tell the author, oh, don't own apartments, it's a nightmare, tenants, leaky faucets, all that. That's the false data. But his reality? He's like, a leaky faucet is just a problem to solve. You know what the real nightmare is? An empty apartment with no rent coming in. See how that false data could have stopped him from a massive opportunity? And that is exactly what's happened with selling. We've all absorbed this false data that selling is sleazy, that you have to be pushy, that it's a tough way to make a living, that you can't count on the money, that it's not even a real job. That's the stuff that makes us recoil from the whole idea. But here's the author's big point. Those images we have in our heads, they're not based on pros. They're based on amateurs, the people who are bad at it and give the whole thing a bad name. And when we buy into that false data, it stops us from getting good at a skill that we desperately need. Okay, so all of this brings us to the final and maybe the most important idea in the whole book. It's a simple truth about every single conversation, every single interaction you will ever have. And that truth is this: in every interaction, a sale is made. Someone is selling their idea and someone else is buying it. Always, no exceptions. So, the only question left is, who is selling who? Are you the one doing the persuading, or are you the one being persuaded? Because according to this book, there's no neutral ground. In every situation, it's one or the other. And that's why this is so critical. The author argues that you can have the best degree, the most experience, the perfect resume, but at the end of the day, your ability to persuade another person is the one thing that will guarantee your spot in the world. So really, this isn't just a business book. This is about everything. Your success as a parent, as a partner, as an employee, as a friend. The book argues it all hinges more on this one skill than on anything else. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. If your life is a commission, what commission are you going to go out and earn today? What are you going to sell for? Maybe it's a new idea at your job. Maybe it's selling yourself on finally starting that workout. Or maybe it's just persuading someone you care about to connect a little deeper. Whatever it is, that commission is out there waiting for you to earn it. All right, let's talk about a word that, makes a lot of people cringe: sales. But what if I told you that selling isn't just about closing a deal? What if it's actually the single most important skill you can have for success in, every part of your life? Well, that's the big idea we're going to unpack right now. You should get a real job. Sound familiar? I mean, have you ever heard someone say that? Maybe you've even thought it about somebody else. It's such a classic line, right? And it's usually aimed at people in sales. It just perfectly captures this huge cultural bias we have. This idea that what they do isn't quite legitimate. Okay, but here's where we flip that on its head. This is the big question for today. What if that very skill we tend to dismiss, what if it's actually the fundamental engine that drives, everything? Not just our careers, but our entire economy, and even our personal lives. So where does this whole stigma even come from? I mean, why do we think that way? To really get it, we need to look at a pretty personal story from the source material. Just look at this contrast, right? On one side, you've got the so-called real jobs: doctor, lawyer, engineer, the ones everyone sees as stable, respectable, safe. But for the author of our source material, these just looked like, boring traps. So when you decided to go into sales, everyone, we're talking family, friends, teachers, they all pushed back. They all told him to go for one of those safer jobs instead. Okay, so let's zoom out from that personal story for a second and look at the huge picture. Because the core idea here is pretty mind-blowing. It's that salespeople aren't just part of the economy, they literally are the economy. They're its lifeblood. So this is a really crucial redefinition of what a salesperson is. We're not talking about being pushy or slick, no. A salesperson is the person who kicks off the entire economic cycle. Think about it like they're the one who pushes the first domino. They start the chain reaction that keeps everything else moving. I mean, really think this through for a second. If a product isn't sold, why would a factory bother making it? And if factories stop producing stuff, then there's nothing to ship, right? No distribution needed. And if no products are moving, there's zero need for advertising. The whole thing just grinds to a halt. The entire economic engine completely stalls. And it all comes down to one person's ability to make that first sale. Okay, so we've established just how important this is for the economy. But the next idea, this one's even bigger. The argument is that this skill isn't just for people who have sales in their job title. Nope, it's for literally everyone. And here is the great paradox, the big irony of it all. Remember those real jobs we were just talking about? The doctor, the lawyer? Well, it turns out their success is completely dependent on selling. The whole argument is that it doesn't matter how smart you are, how brilliant you are in your field, your success ultimately comes down to one thing: your ability to persuade other people. I mean, just think about it for a second. A politician, they're selling their vision to get a vote. A coach is selling the team on a winning strategy. An employee who wants a promotion, you better believe they're selling their value to their boss. A lawyer sells their argument to a jury. A doctor has to sell a patient on following a treatment plan. Even a waiter is selling you on the special of the day. When you start to see it like this, you realize that selling is just another word for effective persuasion. And this brings us to a really, I think, frustrating point that's raised in the source material. If this skill is so incredibly critical for everyone, then why on earth don't we learn it in school? And that question, man, it really hits hard, doesn't it? We spend, what, a decade? More? In school learning all these vital subjects, but this one core skill, the ability to persuade, to negotiate, to communicate your own value, it's just completely missing from the curriculum. The author calls this nothing short of a phenomenal mistake. I mean, we all know the drill, right? We all took English, math, history, chemistry, geography. These are the foundational subjects, and let's be clear, they're absolutely necessary. They give us the basic tools to function in the world. But the real question is, are they enough? And here's the other side of that coin. Here are the skills that bridge that massive gap between just functioning and actually thriving. Things like how to sell an idea, how to negotiate, how to resolve a conflict, how to increase your own value. And because these are missing, the consequence is that most of us get thrown out into the world without the tools that really create success. We're just left to figure it all out on our own, by trial and error. And you know what? Here's the proof. The top producers in every single field, we're talking engineers, film directors, you name it, they don't just rely on what they learned in school. They see this gap and they actively work to fill it. They're the ones reading books on negotiating, on selling, on persuading, because they know that's the key to getting ahead. Okay, which brings us to our final and honestly most powerful point. We're about to move beyond thinking of sales as just a job or even a skill. We're now going to look at it as the single most important asset you can have, the one that basically determines your power and potential in the world. Yeah, just let that one sink in for a moment. This is really the core thesis of the whole thing. True power, real influence, the ability to actually shape your own life and the world around you, it all comes directly from your ability to persuade others. This isn't just about money. It's about having real agency over your own future. And it really boils down to this simple choice. It's an asset versus a liability. On one side, you have the asset, your ability to communicate and convince others. On the other, the liability, an inability to do that. And when it comes to this stuff, there really is no middle ground. Your ability to get people on board with your ideas, well, that's your greatest strength. So I want to leave you with this final question. I want you to forget all the stereotypes about salespeople. Just for a second, think about your own life, your career, your personal goals. Are you actively building that asset, the skill of persuasion, or are you letting a communication liability hold you back? Because from this perspective, the answer to that one question could very well define your entire future.
Let's talk about a skill that most people, well, they either misunderstand it or they flat out hate it. I'm talking about selling. But here's the thing, it's the secret ingredient to success in pretty much everything. And it doesn't matter what you do for a living, learning this one skill like a pro is the key to getting what you want. The difference between a professional and an amateur here can literally change your entire life. So let's break it down.
Okay, let's start with a little puzzle. Think about this for a second. What do innovators like Bill Gates, incredible leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., and the world's best lawyers all have in common? It's probably not what you're thinking.
And here it is. They are all professional sellers. Now, they might not be selling you a product, but make no mistake, they are selling. They're selling a vision, an idea, a whole new way of looking at the world. And it was their professional-level skill and persuasion that made them legends.
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? I mean, really think about that. Every great idea you can imagine, from a world-changing company to a social movement, it all came down to somebody's ability to sell that vision to other people. Your personal dreams are no different.
Now get this, because this number is just wow. A full 75% of the world's population has no idea their success completely depends on this one skill. They are basically walking through life gambling with their future, and they don't even realize they're at the table. So, this brings us to the heart of the matter. When it comes to this fundamental skill of selling, whether you're selling a product, an idea, or even yourself in a job interview, you really only have two ways to go. You can take the path of the professional, or you can stick to the path of the amateur. And let's be super clear on what we mean here. A professional treats this skill like it's their main craft. An amateur, well, they just dabble. They're treating it like a hobby, and frankly, they often lack any real competence. Let's see what that looks like, starting with the amateur's game.
So the amateur's approach is all about just hoping things work out. It's about crossing your fingers, wishing for the best, and basically leaving your success up to fate. It's a game of chance, not a game of skill.
All right, time for a quick gut check. Ask yourself this. Do you often feel like you're struggling to get your way in life? Like you're constantly fighting an uphill battle? This is a huge sign of that amateur mindset.
Or how about this one? Does the very idea of selling just make you cringe a little? That deep-seated fear of rejection is what keeps so many people stuck playing in the amateur leagues.
And one last one, when you're in the middle of trying to persuade someone, does it feel like you're just winging it, just making it up as you go? That lack of a clear strategy is the amateur's calling card.
And it all really boils down to this. The amateur treats the single most important skill for their success like it's a hobby, something they just do with no real study or practice. It's no different than binge watching a show on TV. Okay, enough about that. Let's flip the script. Let's talk about the other path, the path of the professional. This is where you stop leaving things to chance and you start creating your own success with skill and with intention. So, how do you actually do it? Well, our source material breaks it down into 3 key steps. First, it starts with a genuine commitment to the profession. Then, you've got to have a real desire to be great at it. And finally, it demands a deep dedication to actually learning the trade, inside and out. And this, right here, is the ultimate reward for going pro. Predictable outcomes. You're no longer just hoping for a yes. You start to anticipate reactions. You know how to handle objections. You can genuinely predict the result. That is where true, unshakable confidence is born. You know, this is such a critical distinction. Amateurs run on enthusiasm. It's like a sugar rush before a big meeting. It's a temporary feeling. But professionals, they operate from a place of deep knowing. And that knowledge creates a natural, sustainable energy that never burns out. It's the real foundation for success.
And the rewards for choosing this path? Oh, they are immense. I mean, imagine having total control. No ceiling on how much you can make. The freedom to decide what you sell, who you sell it to, and who you want to work with. Your income depends only on your ability. That's real freedom.
So if this path is so amazing, why doesn't everyone do it? Well, that brings us to our final and maybe most powerful idea, the great shortage. And this is exactly where your greatest opportunity is hiding. Just let this quote sink in. The world has millions of people who call themselves salespeople, but there is a massive shortage of true professionals. People with that deep commitment and real skill are incredibly rare. And in any market, what's rare is always valuable.
This chart shows you exactly what happens when things get tough. In a downturn, amateurs are vulnerable. They lose their jobs. But the true professionals, the greats, they don't just survive, they thrive. Their skill is always in demand, making it the ultimate form of career security.
So if you take away one thing, let it be this. Incredible success isn't about getting lucky or being born with some special talent. It's about a choice. The most successful people are the ones who chose to become masters of their craft through deliberate, dedicated practice. In the end, every single dream you have, for your career, for your family, for your life, it all depends on your ability to sell it, first to yourself and then to others. So the only question left is the one on your screen. Will you approach it like an amateur and just hope for the best, or will you commit to becoming a professional and create your own future? The choice is yours.
Have you ever looked at the true greats in any field and just wondered, what separates them from everybody else? Well, according to someone like Grant Cardone, it's not really about talent or luck or even if you picked the right career. Nope, it comes down to one single powerful decision. So let's dive into that and really explore the incredible power of going all in, of 100% commitment.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start by breaking down a really common problem, what we're calling the vicious cycle of mediocrity. Then, we'll talk about the first step to breaking out of it, which is total commitment. And you'll see how that unlocks a kind of superpower, the power of prediction. From there, we'll compare the amateur versus professional mindset, and then wrap it all up with the exact playbook for how you can become great. Okay, first up, the vicious cycle of mediocrity. Let's get right to the heart of why so many of us feel kind of unhappy or just bored with our work. And you know what? The reason probably isn't what you think it is.
I mean, really think about it for a second. Why do so many people feel stuck or just meh about their careers? We blame the company, we blame our boss, the industry, we tell ourselves, oh, I just picked the wrong path. But what if the actual problem is a lot closer to home? And boom, there it is. This is Cardone's whole argument in a nutshell. He's saying that the job itself, that's rarely the actual issue. The real problem, the thing that's making you feel bad, is your lack of a full 100% commitment to it. See, it's not the job you hate, it's the feeling of losing at it that you hate. And this slide just lays out that whole downward spiral perfectly. It all kicks off with no commitment. And because you're not really all in, you don't get great results, right? And when you don't get results, you can't feel any real pride in what you're doing. And without that pride, well, you end up disliking your job, which just feeds right back into that lack of commitment. It's this awful self-fulfilling prophecy. So the big question is, how do you break that cycle? Well, it all starts with one single, decisive action, making a total commitment. Now, the key word here is completely. This isn't about just, trying something out or keeping your options open. No, this is about deciding that this is it. You completely eliminate all other possibilities and you pour all your energy into the path you're on, almost like your life depends on it, because in a way, the life you really want does. Now, this is a wild idea, right? But what this quote is getting at is that the power comes from the act of commitment itself, not from picking the so-called perfect path. Think about it. A half-hearted effort, even on a great path, is going to get you nowhere. But a full-on 100% effort, even on a flawed path, that's going to get you results, and you're going to learn some incredibly valuable lessons. Cardone actually tells this great story about when this principle first smacked him in the face. He was working on a boat, and on this total gut instinct, he bought the crew's entire catch of red snapper. So suddenly, he's got a truck full of fish and one giant problem. The ice was melting, and it was melting fast. This right here was what you'd call a burn the ships moment. There was no plan B. He couldn't go back. He had to sell those fish, or he would lose everything. And that desperation, that total lack of options, forced a level of commitment and creativity he'd never even touched before. He just started knocking on doors, going to businesses, literally creating a market out of thin air. And the result of all that? In just a few hours, he made more money than he had in the last 2 weeks of doing backbreaking labor. And that's when the light bulb went off. He understood the magic. That do or die, no other options level of commitment, it creates immediate, powerful results. But see, committing fully doesn't just get you results today. It unlocks something that honestly feels like a superpower for tomorrow, the ability to predict the future. Now, we're not talking about being psychic here. It's simpler than that. When you are 100% all in, you become a fanatic. You become a student of your field. You watch everything. You take notes. You analyze every little interaction. And when you study something that intensely, patterns start to pop out, and you get this uncanny ability to see what's coming next. And this superpower is an absolute game changer. I mean, imagine knowing what a client is going to say before they say it, handling objections before they're even spoken. Suddenly, you're not just reacting anymore, you're controlling the entire exchange. You can forecast your income with real accuracy and see the whole field of play like a chess grandmaster.
And really, this ability to predict, that's the ultimate dividing line. It's what separates the amateurs from the true professionals.
And you can see the difference laid out right here. The amateur, they're only partially committed. The professional is all in. The amateur is just winging it, but the professional knows what they're doing. And when things go south, the amateur blames everything else, the economy, bad luck, you name it. The professional, they create their own results. It's the difference between hoping for success and predicting it. And this brings us right back to that central idea. If you hate your job, that's just a symptom. The real disease is a lack of knowledge. You're not in control, which means you're not winning. And nobody likes to lose. A doctor who can't save lives will grow to hate being a doctor. A salesperson who can't close a deal is going to hate selling. It's that simple.
A perfect and pretty painful example of this is the story of this guy, Scott Morgan. He'd never skied in his life, but he arrogantly insisted on starting at the very top of a super treacherous mountain. He had zero knowledge, zero training, and he spent the entire day in just a state of sheer terror trying to get down. His lack of knowledge made the whole experience completely miserable and, honestly, dangerous.
So how do we avoid our own disaster on the slopes? How do we actually go from being an amateur to being a pro and get this power of prediction? All right, let's break down the exact steps.
It's really a four-step process. First, you commit all the way. Burn the ships, no turning back. Second, you become an obsessive observer. You record everything, every customer question, every objection, every win, every loss. Third, you study that data until you find the patterns, because they're in there. And fourth, you prepare solutions in advance for those predictable patterns you found.
This right here, this is the logic chain that leads to greatness. It all starts with knowledge. When you truly know your stuff, you can predict what's going to happen. When you can predict, you can control the situation. And when you are in control, you win.
And this creates the exact opposite of that vicious cycle we started with. This is a virtuous cycle. Winning builds confidence, which leads to more winning. The more you know, the fewer rejections and no's you have to deal with. And the fewer no's you hear, the more pride and enjoyment you get from your work, which just drives you to commit even deeper. See how that works?
So in the end, it all comes down to this. The path is actually pretty clear, but it is not easy. It takes a level of fanatical devotion that, let's be honest, most people just aren't willing to give. So the final question isn't about whether this works. The question is for you. Are you ready to pay the price and actually do the work to become one of the greats?
Today, we're going to break down a massive concept from Grant Cardone's Sell or Be Sold. It's about the one sale that honestly dictates every other success or failure you'll ever have. Let's dive in. So, have you ever been in this spot? You've got a great product, your pitch is on point, the customer seems interested, but for some reason you just can't get them over the line. The deal stalls out. It is one of the most frustrating feelings in the world. Whether you're in sales, trying to get funding for an idea, or shoot, even just trying to convince your friends where to eat. So what's the deal? What's the missing piece of the puzzle? Well, according to Cardone, here's the twist. The problem probably isn't the customer, the price, or your competition. The problem is you. If things aren't moving, if you're not getting your way, it's because somewhere, deep down, you aren't 100% sold on what you're offering. Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we're going to walk through 5 key ideas. First, we'll talk about the single most important sale you'll ever make. Then, we'll see why conviction is basically a superpower. After that, the advantage of being a little unreasonable, the ultimate test of your belief, and finally, how to cure that dreaded performance slump. So let's jump right in with that first critical step, the number 1 sale. You see, before you ever try to persuade a customer or an investor, Cardone says you have to make the most important sale of all, and that sale happens right between your own 2 ears. Think of it like this. Your external results are a direct mirror of your internal belief. Any doubt, any tiny bit of hesitation, any little voice in your head saying the other guy's product might be better, all of that gets transmitted to your buyer, whether you realize it or not. This is non-negotiable. You have to be totally, completely, 100% sold first. Okay, so if being sold on your own stuff is the goal, what's the engine that actually gets you there? Well, it all comes down to one incredibly powerful force: conviction. And we're not just talking about a casual belief here. It's something way, way stronger. When you actually look at where the word comes from, it changes everything. Conviction comes from the Latin word for to conquer. So it's not a passive feeling, right? It's an active, conquering force. It's the power to conquer your own doubt. And by doing that, you can conquer the doubt in your buyer's mind. Cardone tells this fantastic story to show what this looks like in the real world. He was selling a house, and the top realtor in the area, the expert, told him it was worth maybe $6 million. But Cardone was so convinced of its unique location and its value that he just flat out refused and listed it for $8.9 million. And the result? Just 2 months later, that house sold for pretty much the full asking price. You see, his conviction wasn't just a personal feeling. It was a force that literally reshaped the buyer's reality of what that house was worth. His total belief became their belief. And this is the fundamental rule of any sale. It's not just a transaction, it's a transfer of enthusiasm, a transfer of belief. When your certainty is greater than their uncertainty, a sale is made. It's that simple. The person with the most conviction in the room always wins. So we know conviction is absolutely essential. But to be truly great, to really change the game, Cardone says you've got to take it one step further. You have to become unreasonable. Because let's face it, just being logical and sensible doesn't really change the world. I mean, just look at this comparison. Society tells us to be reasonable, Be sensible, be logical. But greatness, true greatness, comes from being unreasonable, sometimes even fanatical. Reasonable people, they accept the world as it is. They ride bicycles. Unreasonable people are so single-minded, so sold on their vision, that they invent flight. Think about it for a second. Every single major breakthrough in human history came from someone who was unreasonably sold on an idea that pretty much everyone else called impossible. People thought Alexander Graham Bell was a total nut for trying to send a voice over a wire. Flight, space travel, the internet, all of these were born from an absolutely unreasonable level of conviction. So, how can you know for sure if you're truly unreasonably sold? How do you actually measure your own conviction? Well, there's one simple, undeniable test that cuts through all the talk. This story just says it all. You have an agent, and he's hyping up this property, calling it a fabulous investment. The buyer, though, isn't quite feeling it, so he asks the one question that matters. How many of these have you bought for yourself? The agent's answer? None? Well, it just vaporized his credibility on the spot. Sale over. At the end of the day, your actions shout way louder than your words ever could. If you're selling financial products but you don't own any of them yourself, you're not sold. If you're a waitress raving about the steak but you're a vegetarian, you're not sold. And here's the ultimate test. Would you sell this to your own mother? If the answer is no, then you're not a believer. You're just a mercenary working for a paycheck. And this isn't just some feel-good theory. It has a massive impact on your bottom line. Cardone talks about that finance and insurance salesman. After he was told to actually buy the policies he was selling, his income quadrupled. Not doubled, it went up by 4 times. Why? Because he could finally look a customer dead in the eye and say, with 100% honesty, I own this myself. And that authenticity, it's unstoppable. This whole idea also explains a really common problem, something I bet you've seen before. Someone starts a new job, they're on fire, crushing it for the first few months, and then, around day 90, their performance just falls off a cliff. Now, management might call it laziness, but Cardone says the real root cause is a crisis of conviction. The anatomy of this slump is pretty straightforward. You start out with tons of energy, fully believing. Then maybe a tough deal falls apart, or you hear some negative feedback, and a tiny seed of doubt gets planted. That little crack in your conviction starts to widen until eventually you're not fully sold on your product anymore. In fact, you become sold on a totally new idea, the idea that it's a bad idea to sell it. And of course, your results plummet. So, what's the cure? How do you pull out of that nosedive? It's actually simple. You have to get resold. You have to actively go back, find the source of that doubt, that piece of false information, and handle it. You have to remind yourself of every single reason your product is the best. Basically, you have to sell yourself all over again, from scratch. This right here, this is the ultimate goal. To get to a place where you are so completely fanatically sold on what you have that you genuinely believe it would be a disservice, almost unethical, for the customer not to buy from you. When you get to that level, selling stops feeling like persuasion and starts feeling like an act of service. And that really brings us to the final question you need to ask yourself. And this isn't just about your job. It's about any idea or project you're trying to push forward in your life. Are you just going through the motions, just there to collect a fee, or are you a true believer, so completely sold that your conviction becomes an unstoppable force? Because the answer to that question is going to define everything.
All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to tackle one of the biggest, most stubborn ideas in the world of sales, what I like to call the price myth. So if you're in sales, I'm sure you've heard this a million times. You have a fantastic conversation, everything's going great, you're pretty sure the deal is in the bag, and then, bam, you get hit with those 4 little words, it's just too expensive. It feels like running full speed into a brick wall, doesn't it? And you know what that leads to? This belief right here. When you ask most salespeople why they lost a deal, they'll tell you the exact same thing. It was the price. It's kind of the default excuse, right? It's what we tell our boss, it's what we tell ourselves. But what if that's not the real story? What if it's all just a big misunderstanding?
Yeah, you heard that right. This whole idea that price is the #1 reason you lose a sale, well, according to the research we're looking at today, it's a total lie. It's a myth, and we are about to completely tear it apart.
Okay, so to prove this point, let's look at this really fascinating real-world experiment. The idea behind it was super simple. If price is really the big problem, then, well, slashing the price should make sales go through the roof. I mean, that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? So here's what they did. They took a sales seminar in Detroit.
a place where, by the way, attendance was always really strong, and they just destroyed the price. They slashed it to just 1/10 of the normal cost. The guy who came up with this idea was absolutely certain they were going to have the biggest crowd they'd ever seen. And what happened? It was a complete and utter disaster. Seriously, we're not talking about a small dip in attendance here. It was the worst attended seminar in 20 years. The ticket sales were so bad, they didn't even cover the cost of the plane ticket to get there. So think about that. When the price was the only thing to talk about, the actual value just, poof, disappeared.
But wait, because this is where the story gets really, really interesting. After that massive failure, they decided to flip the whole thing on its head. They didn't just bring the price back to normal. No, they doubled it. And what happened next was absolutely staggering.
That's not a typo. Doubling the original price led to a more than 100% jump in attendance. Isn't that wild? It just goes to show you, a higher price didn't scare people away. It actually pulled them in because it signaled that this thing had real value. So, if price isn't the real problem, then what in the world is going on?
Well, that brings us to the heart of the matter, the real reasons people buy things. See, it turns out that buying something isn't this cold, logical decision you make on a spreadsheet. Not at all. It's actually driven by two incredibly powerful emotions.
And it all boils down to these two triggers. The first one is love. I mean, does your buyer absolutely love this thing? Do they feel like they can't live without it? And the second trigger is confidence. Are they 100% sure, without a shadow of a doubt, that your product is going to solve their problem? If you can get a yes to both of those questions, price becomes like an afterthought.
So think about it. When a customer says, it costs too much, what they're really thinking about are all these other deeper questions. They're asking themselves, is this the right thing for me? Is it really going to solve my problems? What are people going to think if I buy this? Am I just going to make another dumb mistake? See, saying it's too expensive is just the easy way out. It's the polite way to say, I'm not sure.
And once you understand that, it opens the door to a strategy that feels completely backwards, but man, is it powerful. When someone objects to the price, what's our first instinct? It's to go lower, right? Offer a discount, find a cheaper model. Well, the advice here is to do the exact opposite.
Just look at how this plays out. The typical mistake is you immediately offer something cheaper, but all that does is make the buyer think, aha, I knew you were trying to overcharge me, and poof, the trust is gone. So what's the solution? It's kind of crazy. You move them up. You actually suggest something more expensive. And what that does is it instantly changes the conversation from being about price to being about value. It forces them to tell you what they're really worried about.
And this right here is the key to the whole thing, psychologically speaking. Every single one of us has a story about that time we bought the cheap version of something and totally regretted it. The real fear isn't about spending the money. The real fear is about making another mistake. People will gladly, happily pay more if it means they know they're making the right decision.
There's this great little story that illustrates this perfectly. A charity was trying to get a $10,000 donation from this one wealthy guy. They spent a whole year on it and got nothing. So the new person in charge tries a different approach. They go back and ask for $100,000 instead. Guess what? Deal closed. In 10 minutes. Why? Because the guy didn't think 10 grand was enough to actually solve the problem. But 100 grand? That felt like it would make a real, meaningful difference. It gave him confidence. Which brings us to the last piece of this puzzle. And honestly, this might be the hardest one to swallow. If the customer's not the problem, and the price isn't the problem, then what's left? It's you, it's us. The salesperson's own belief that the price is the problem, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If deep down you think your product is too expensive, you're going to project that insecurity. You're going to give off those vibes. And you will kill the sale yourself, way before the customer ever gets a chance to. And look, this isn't some high-level, abstract theory. Just think about your own daily life. Why do we buy a $4 coffee when we can literally make a whole pot at home for pennies? It's not about the price, is it? It's about the experience, the convenience, that feeling you get. Or what about this? Why buy a $2 bottle of water when the tap is totally free? We're paying for convenience, sure, or maybe we think it's pure, or we like the brand. The free option is always sitting right there, but we still support a multi-billion-dollar industry just by choosing something other than price.
Okay, now think about the biggest purchase most of us will ever make, a house. When someone finds that perfect home, the one they fall in love with, the one they're absolutely confident will make their family happy, Suddenly that budget gets, well, it gets a little flexible, doesn't it? It's a massive financial decision, and it's driven almost 100% by emotion.
So what's the big takeaway here? It's really simple, but I promise you, it's a game changer. It's never about the price. It's always about love or confidence. Your job isn't to justify the price tag. Your job is to make your customer fall in love with what you're selling and feel totally confident that it's going to solve their problems. If you can do that, you'll realize that price was never really the monster you thought it was.
Okay, let's just jump right into it. We're about to unpack a really powerful, maybe even a little bit radical, way of thinking about money that could totally change how you sell. This comes straight from Grant Cardone's playbook, and it's called the second money seeker. So let's just start with this one statement that honestly goes against pretty much everything we're ever taught. There is no shortage of money. It just feels wrong, right? Like the total opposite of reality. But according to Cardone, this is the one belief you absolutely have to adopt first. So just for a second, let's play along. Let's just suspend our disbelief and really ask ourselves, what if he's actually right? I mean, what if there really is this infinite supply of money out there, and the only thing holding us back is just how we think about it? And that right there, that leads us straight into what Cardone calls the great money myth. You know the one. It's that belief that money's a limited resource, right? That there's this one tiny pie and we all have to fight tooth and nail for our little slice. Well, let's tear that idea apart, because it's a total trap. Okay, get this. Just to give you an idea of the scale we're talking about, there is enough money circulating on this planet right now for every single person, every man, woman, and child to have a net worth of $1 billion. $1 billion. I mean, when you really let that number sink in, the whole idea of scarcity just starts to sound, well, kind of ridiculous, doesn't it? And Cardone has this fantastic analogy for this. He says, think of the economy like the Pacific Ocean. You can go out there with a bucket, a tanker truck, whatever you've got, and you can take as much water as you could possibly carry. Now, does that make any difference at all to the ocean? No, not a drop, really. He's saying money is exactly the same thing. It's this infinite, always flowing resource. And you know what? You don't even need these giant abstract numbers to see it's true. Just look around. I mean, right now, people are buying houses, they're buying cars, paying their phone bills, buying clothes. Money is always moving. It is constantly flowing. It's not locked up in some vault somewhere. It's being exchanged everywhere, all the time, every single second. Okay, so if there's this giant ocean of money out there, why aren't our buckets just overflowing, right? Good question. And this is where we make a really important shift. We stop looking at the economy and we start looking at our own psychology. Because the real shortage, it's not out there in the world, it's right between our ears. Here's the killer connection. Cardone says that however you feel about money, you're projecting that directly onto your customers. So if you treat money like it's this super precious, scarce thing, something you hate to let go of, you're sending that signal, probably without even realizing it, to your buyers. And guess what? They're going to mirror the exact same feeling right back at you. And this is the huge mental shift you have to make. The best of the best, the top performers, they don't see money as a possession to be hoarded. They see it as a tool, simple as that. A tool to be used, to be circulated, to be invested, to create more value. And when you really truly believe that, asking a customer to use their tool becomes a totally different conversation. It's just so much more natural. Okay, so we've busted that scarcity myth. We're on the same page. Now we're ready for the main event. This is the core technique, the secret that puts this whole abundance mindset into action. It's what he calls the second money secret. So here it is, plain and simple. It's called the second money phenomenon. And the big idea is this. All the hard work, all the friction, all the struggle, it's in getting that very first yes from a customer. But once they make that first decision to buy from you, getting them to buy more is, well, it's surprisingly, almost magically way, way easier. You know, Cardone actually figured this out completely by accident. The story goes he spent hours, just hours, trying to convince this super hesitant executive team to finally agree to a deal. And the second they finally said yes, just on a total whim, he said, hey, you should probably just move up to the more expensive package. And to his total shock, they just went, yeah, okay, and agreed instantly. They even told him they were already thinking about it. Boom, that was the light bulb moment. But why? Why does that work so well? It's not just some slick sales trick. It's actually rooted in some really deep human psychology. So let's break down exactly why this thing is so darn effective. Okay, this is the absolute key to the whole thing. Think about it. When you or I make a big, tough decision to buy something, there's a little voice in the back of our head screaming, "Oh man, did I do the right thing?" Right? Well, that second follow-up purchase, that's the confirmation. It's how we tell ourselves, yes, this was such a great decision, I'm going to double down on it. It completely validates that first harder choice. And I'm telling you, once you see this pattern, you will not be able to unsee it. It is everywhere. Think about the shopper on Rodeo Drive. They never have just one bag, do they? Or the travel agent who sells you all the tours and insurance after you've already booked the big cruise. There's even a story about a church donor who, once he committed to writing a check, was easily convinced to tear it up and write a new one for 20 times the amount. It's just how we're wired. Here's a perfect example. A night at the movies. Someone will complain and complain about a $10 movie ticket. That's the first money, right? The hard decision. But then what do? They walk right over to the concession stand and drop $20 on popcorn and a soda without even blinking. That's the second money. And it feels totally different, doesn't it? And it's not just for small stuff. This works with huge purchases. A car buyer will absolutely grind a salesperson into the dust to save like $5 on their monthly payment. Then they'll turn right around and slap thousands of dollars in custom rims, a fancy paint job, a new stereo, all on a high-interest credit card. A lot of the time, the payments on all those second money add-ons are actually more than the payment for the car itself. It's wild. So let's bring this all home. The big takeaway here is really, really clear. This isn't about learning some new script or a clever tactic. This is about completely changing the game inside your own head. It's about shifting your entire mental framework about what money even is. And look, the payoff for making the shift, it's absolutely massive. We're not talking about small, little 10% gains here. Cardone frames this as the way to literally quantum leap your income. This is for people who are dead serious about getting to that next level and getting there fast. So here's the bottom line, the most crucial point of all. The customer, they're already psychologically primed and ready to say yes to your second offer. The only thing stopping it from happening is you. It's the salesperson's own fear. It's that little voice in your head that whispers, "Whoa, don't get greedy now. You're going to blow the whole deal." Learning to shut that voice up, that's the final piece of the puzzle. And that brings us full circle, right back to where we started. Look, if you only take one single thing away from all of this, let it be this. The limits on your income, they are not in your customer's bank account. They're in your own mind. The problem was never a shortage of money. It was always a shortage of your belief that it's all out there for the taking. So I'm going to leave you with a question to chew on. Think back to the last big purchase you made. A car, a vacation, maybe a new phone, whatever. Now, what were the extras you bought right after? What was the second money you spent? Maybe without even thinking about it, just to prove to yourself that you made the right call on that first big decision. Really think about it. I bet the answer is going to surprise you.
All right, let's talk about selling. Today, we're going to flip the script on pretty much everything you've ever been taught. See, it's not really about your product, your service, or even your price. Nope, it's about something way more fundamental, and it all starts with one simple question. So let me just ask you, right out of the gate, what do you think is the #1 biggest mistake people make when they're trying to sell something? Just take a second. What's the very first thing that pops into your head?
If you're like most people, you probably landed on something like this, right? Not knowing your product inside and out. The old school thinking is that if you could just memorize every single feature, every spec, you'd be a selling machine. But what if that's not just wrong? What if it's actually a trap?
Yeah, that's the trap right there. Because when you focus all of your energy on the product, you completely miss the single most important part of the entire equation.
We're going to call this the product knowledge trap. It's this idea that being a product expert is the key to success. But as you're about to see, that's like putting the cart way, way before the horse.
And this quote just nails it. You can be a walking, talking encyclopedia for your product, but if you're clueless about the person you're selling to, you're going to get minimal results every single time. You know why? Because products don't buy products. People do.
So how do we fix this? How do we get out of the trap? Well, it starts with a simple but really powerful principle we'll call the 80-20 people rule. And honestly, this little shift in thinking changes absolutely everything.
So here's how it breaks down. Selling is 80% about understanding people and only 20% about understanding the product. Now, don't get me wrong, that 20% is still super important. You got to know your stuff. But the lion's share, the vast majority of your success, comes from connecting with and actually understanding the human being right in front of you.
And if you doubt this for a second, just think about it. People buy stuff that isn't the best or the cheapest all the time. You know, when someone runs into a convenience store for a carton of milk, they're not buying it because it's the highest quality milk in the world. They're buying convenience. They're buying 5 extra minutes at home with their family. They're buying a solution to a totally different problem.
Let's dive into a couple of real-world stories that really bring this 80-20 rule to life.
Okay, picture this. A shoe shine stand in the middle of a busy airport. The owner is obsessed, with the quality of his wax and his buffing technique. In his mind, he's in the shoe shine business, but he sees people just rushing right past him, and it's not because his shines aren't good enough. It's because that businessman is stressed about missing his flight. He's not trying to buy a perfect shine. He needs to buy speed. If that stand had a big sign that said 60-second shines, he'd have a line out the door. The shoe shine guy isn't in the shoe shine business. He's in the people business. Or think about a gas station. The owner knows your name. He always cleans your windshield. Maybe he hands you a free bottle of water. Are you really just buying gas from him? Of course not. You're buying service. You're buying the feeling of being recognized and taken care of. He gets it. He's not in the gas business. He's in the people business. And that's why you keep going back.
Okay, so we get it. We need to focus on people. But what does that actually look like? What do you do? Well, the key isn't talking, it's asking. It's all about genuine communication.
Just check out this story. A guy walks into a computer store, and the first salesman just unloads a fire hose of tech specs on him. Megabytes this, processing speed that. The customer just walks out, totally confused. A week later, he tries another store. This time, the salesperson just starts asking questions. Hey, will you be traveling with it? What are you going to be using it for? In just 60 seconds, she showed more interest in him than the first guy did in 15 minutes. And the result? She didn't just sell one laptop, she sold 2 plus a desktop and a bunch of accessories, all because she put the person first.
Because that's what real communication is, right? It's not a monologue. The dictionary itself says it's an exchange of information. If you're just talking at someone about your product, that's not an exchange, it's a speech. And let's be honest, speeches rarely close a deal.
To create that exchange, you have to build a bridge of questions. Instead of just launching into your pitch, you ask things that prove you actually want to help. Simple stuff, like, what do you really want this to do for you? Or, on a scale of 1 to 10, how's what you're doing now working out? These aren't just questions. They're proof that you care more about their problem than your sale. But there's a huge roadblock that can stop this people-first approach dead in its tracks. And a lot of times, it comes from inside the company itself. It's what happens when a rigid, inflexible process becomes more important than the actual customer.
And this is a rule you should write down. A product is just a thing. A process is just a set of steps. But people are alive. And the second your company's rules get in the way of helping a real person, that whole system is broken. It's guaranteed to fail.
I mean, get this. It's an almost comical example. A guy was so pumped about the new Hummer H2, he called a dealership ready to buy one right then and there. He had one question: how much is it? And the salesperson said, I can't tell you. It's company policy not to give prices over the phone. A policy that was designed to stop people from price shopping literally stopped a guaranteed sale from happening. They put the process before the person. Unbelievable.
So after hearing all this, what's the big takeaway? What's the one thing you need to remember? Well, it calls for a complete shift in how you see yourself and what you do. It's time to give yourself a brand new job title.
And this is it, right here. Stop thinking you're in the real estate business or the insurance business or the software business. The product you sell is secondary. Your real job, no matter what's on your business card, is being in the people business. Your main job is to understand, to help, and to communicate with other human beings. Period. So that leaves us with one final question for you. Take a second and really think about it. If you strip away the product, the service, and the company logo, what business are you truly in? Because I promise you, understanding the answer to that question might just change everything. Okay, so today we're going to unpack a single, but oh man, a profoundly powerful technique from sales psychology. But this thing can totally transform how you communicate.
It's a really simple rule that you'll see applies not just at work, but, well, in every part of your life. And once you see it, you're going to start noticing it everywhere. So, let's just jump right in with a question. In this whole world of persuasion and influence, what is the one rule that gets broken more than any other? It's a rule that's so fundamental that when you ignore it, it's kind of like trying to swim against a really powerful current. I mean, you might make a little progress, but eventually you're just going to get exhausted. Now, you've probably heard that old saying, right? The customer is always right. But come on, we've all been in situations, whether we're the customer or the one providing the service, where we know that is just not true. People can be misinformed, they can be mistaken, or sometimes they're just plain wrong. And here it is. This is the paradox that unlocks the whole thing. Even if they're not right, you should always agree with them. I know, that sounds completely backwards, maybe even a little dishonest. But just stick with me here, because understanding this tension, that is the absolute key to becoming a master communicator.
So this brings us to what's often called the golden rule of sales. And the crucial point here is that this is not about admitting that the other person is factually correct. No, it's about something much deeper and honestly way more strategic. So let's get really clear on what this means. The agreement rule is all about the principle of always finding something, anything, to agree with in what the other person is saying. The goal here isn't to win a debate, it's to build a bridge. You're not agreeing with the facts necessarily, you're agreeing with their reality in that moment.
And this, right here, this is the critical distinction. It's a total shift in your perspective. You aren't validating their statement as some kind of universal truth. You are just acknowledging their point of view. You're basically saying, hey, I get it. From where you're standing, this is how you see it. And that tiny act of validation, it is unbelievably powerful.
Okay, so why does this work so incredibly well? Let's take a look at the simple psychology that makes this rule a secret weapon in communication.
You know, it really just boils down to a fundamental human truth. We gravitate towards people who validate us. I mean, think about it. Your closest friends are probably people who share your core beliefs, right? Agreement creates connection. Disagreement creates distance. When you disagree with someone, you're essentially telling them they're wrong, and that instantly puts them on the defensive.
And this just lays out the two paths so clearly, doesn't it? Disagreeing, well, that just creates resistance. It's an exhausting, uphill battle against that current we talked about. But agreeing, that creates rapport. It lets you go with the flow, and you can guide the conversation where you want it to go. You actually stay in control because you're not locked into conflict.
Okay, theory's great, but let's make this practical. What does this actually sound like in a real conversation? Let's look at a few common objections and see how this agreement rule completely changes the entire dynamic.
Here's the classic, the number one objection you're going to hear in pretty much any sales environment. It's just too much money. The knee-jerk reaction, right, is to argue, to list all the reasons why it's worth it, but just watch what happens when we agree first.
I agree, it's a lot of money. Boom. Just like that, you've completely disarmed him. You're on their side now. And then you pivot, using their own objection as the very reason to move forward. See? You haven't disagreed, you've just reframed. It's a perfect example of going with the current instead of fighting it. All right, let's try another one. Let's say in real estate. A potential buyer walks through a house and says, "Ugh, the bedrooms are too small." An amateur might start defending the room size, pulling out a tape measure. But a professional does this. Again, immediate agreement. You're right. You've just joined their team. But then you turn it into this collaborative problem-solving thing by asking a question. This invites them to find a solution with you, and you get to figure out how serious that objection really is, all without creating a fight.
Okay, one final one. This one's about the process, not the product itself. The customer feels a little pressured, so they put up a wall. They say, "We never make rash decisions." Now, fighting this head-on, that is a losing battle every single time.
So what do? You agree with the principle itself. You validate their wisdom. You say something like, "I agree completely. A rash decision would be the absolute wrong move." And then you can reframe the situation. You show them that this isn't some rash leap of faith, but the logical next step in a careful process they've already been following. You honor their values while still moving things forward. It's brilliant.
Now, I know what some of you might be thinking right now. Is this genuine, or is this just some kind of slick manipulation tactic? And that's a fair question. It really gets to the heart of how you use this technique.
Look, the answer all comes down to your intent. This isn't about trying to deceive someone, it's about trying to understand them. You're acknowledging their perspective so you can build a bridge. That connection then allows you to present your own point of view without just hitting a wall of resistance.
So, the absolute best way to truly grasp the power of this isn't just to hear about it. You've got to experience it. So I'm going to leave you with a simple but surprisingly difficult challenge. For one single day, make it your mission to agree with everyone. Your spouse, your kids, your boss, your clients, every single interaction. And here's the kicker. If you catch yourself disagreeing even once, the challenge resets. You have to start the day over. And just pay close attention to how it changes the tone, the outcomes, and even your own stress levels.
So here's the bottom line. The next time you feel that urge to disagree bubbling up, just pause, take a breath, and try one of these phrases instead. You are right, or I agree. These simple words can put out the fire of an argument before it even starts and open the door to a real connection.
So I'll leave you with this. Think about your own life right now. At work, at home, where is there a stalemate, a recurring argument? The next time it comes up, what do you think would happen if your very first response was a simple, genuine, "You're right"? Where could that conversation go from there?
Have you ever felt like you were just talking to a brick wall? You know, trying to convince someone of something that you know is a fantastic idea, but they're just not getting it? Well, we're about to dive into a super powerful principle from Grant Cardone that will completely flip the script on how you build trust and get people on your side. Okay, let's start right here because this is the big one. This quote changes everything. When you feel that resistance, that skepticism, our first instinct is to think, what is their problem? But Cardone says, no, no, no. Their distrust isn't their problem to solve. It's yours. So where does this wall of distrust even come from? Look, for pretty much anyone you're trying to persuade, whether it's a client, your boss, an investor, you just have to assume that skepticism is their factory default setting. And you know what? It's rarely personal. I mean, think about it. We are all swimming in a sea of stories about scams, bad deals, and cons. Plus, most of us have been burned before in one way or another. So the skepticism you're facing, it isn't really hostility. It's just a defense mechanism. But the problem is it gums up the works, right? It adds time, friction, and a whole lot of doubt to the entire process. And this brings us right back to that critical mindset shift. Instead of getting frustrated and trying to fight their distrust, you have to own it. You have to take 100% responsibility for bridging that gap. On one side, you've got the amateur mindset, which is just a dead end, right? He can't make a decision. She's wasting my time. But the professional? They flip it completely. If you don't buy, that's my fault. I take full responsibility. All the power is in that shift. Cardone has this fantastic story about this. He was in a furniture store, and a guy walks in and announces, "Just so you know, I'm not buying anything today." Now, most people would just back off, but Cardone, he just smiled and said this exact line. And the customer was so taken aback, he actually grinned, started talking about what he was looking for, and ended up buying furniture for his entire house. See? Taking responsibility totally disarms people and changes the whole vibe. Okay, so if we accept that it's our job to overcome distrust, how in the world do we actually do it? Well, the core tactic is surprisingly simple, but man, is it effective. This right here is the golden rule. I want you to burn this into your brain. People believe what they see, not what they hear. Your words, no matter how convincing you are, can always be brushed off as just talk. But physical, visual proof, something they can hold in their hands, that feels real. That's how you build rock-solid credibility. You remember playing the telephone game as a kid, right? A story starts at one end of the line, and by the time it gets to the last person, it's completely warped and different. It's not that people are trying to lie, it's just the nature of spoken information. It degrades. Putting things down in writing stops that from happening. It creates this solid foundation that you can both stand on. So if people believe what they see, your job becomes pretty straightforward. Give them something to look at. It's time to stop talking so much and start building a real case file with tangible proof. Your goal here is to build a case that's basically undeniable. So what goes in it? Things like third-party articles, written proposals with super clear pricing, performance stats, customer testimonials, and hey, don't be afraid to include info on your competitors. It shows you've done your homework. When someone sees how thoroughly you've prepared, their confidence in you just skyrockets. Cardone tells this other story that is just the perfect example. He wanted a wealthy friend to invest in a real estate deal. So did he call him up and give him a big sales pitch? Nope. He invited him to the property. He didn't tell him anything. He showed him everything. The tenants, the numbers, the competition, and the result? In less than half an hour, his friend was the one asking, "So, can I invest in this?" That's the power of showing, not telling.
See, when you give people all this transparent written information, you create something called an informed buyer. And an informed buyer isn't running on gut feelings or fear, they're operating on logic. And that makes them way more decisive and, frankly, a whole lot easier to work with.
And this is really the end goal of the whole show, don't tell method. You completely transform the final decision from this foggy, emotional moment of uncertainty into a clear, confident moment of logic. I mean, the difference is just night and day. An uninformed buyer, they're emotional, sometimes irrational, and they get stuck. But the buyer you've armed with facts and data, they're logical and decisive. You can finally have a real conversation because you're both literally looking at the same page. Now, don't get me wrong, emotion is important. It's great for sparking that initial interest and getting people excited. So the big question you have to ask yourself is this. When you're making your case, are you asking people to take a leap of faith based only on your words? Or are you building them a solid bridge of proof that they can actually walk across and see for themselves? The answer to that question makes all the difference in the world. All right, let's talk about a sales philosophy that is so powerful and honestly so counterintuitive, it could completely change the way you think about your job. We're talking about the idea of give, give, give. So let's just start with a really basic question. For as long as anyone can remember, sales has been all about the close, right? Hitting your number, getting that commission check. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if the whole game isn't about what you get, but about what you give? And that question leads us straight into something you could call the sales paradox. It's this weird, ironic truth that the harder you focus on your own reward on that commission, the more likely you are to actually push the deal away. I mean, this is the default setting for so many of us in sales, right? Your mind is on the commission. You're thinking about what you're going to get out of this. And look, even if you don't say it out loud, people can feel that. They can sense when they're just a number, just a means to your end. And that creates this invisible wall between you. So if that's the problem, what's the solution? Well, this is where we get to the core idea. And this isn't just some new trick or tactic. This is a complete, fundamental shift in your entire approach. It's about flipping the script from a mindset of getting to a mindset of giving. And Matt, this quote from Grant Cardone just nails it. Selling is the act of giving, not getting. Serving, not selling. It completely reframes the goal. Your success isn't about closing a deal. It's about genuinely serving the person in front of you. But let's be super clear about what giving actually means here. This is not about giving away your product or having the lowest price. Not at all. It's about giving the things that are way more valuable. Your undivided attention, your positive energy, a great attitude, and just the absolute highest level of service you can possibly imagine. So what does that look like in the real world? It means you give your full undivided attention. You put your phone away, you listen. It means you give them a ton of options. They ask for one, give them 3 or 6 or even 12. Show them you're willing to do the work. You bring an amazing attitude to every single phone call, every meeting. You deliver the best service they've ever had. And all of this is built on a real, sincere desire to help them win. Now, to really understand the power of this, there's this incredible story that shows what happens when someone commits 100% to the act of giving. Okay, so picture this scene. A couple's walking out of a restaurant in New Orleans, and this man approaches them. He looks a little rough, his coat's seen better days, and all he asks is if he can sing a song for the wife. And for the next 2 minutes, he doesn't just sing. He gives them everything he has. He pours his entire heart, his soul, every ounce of his energy into that performance. He holds nothing back, and he has absolutely no guarantee of getting a single dime. For those 2 minutes, he was there completely and totally for them. And what was the result of that pure, unconditional act of giving? $100 bill. $100 for a 2-minute song. The husband, who is a salesman himself, was just floored. He said the man's intention to give was so powerful that even $100 felt like it wasn't enough for the value he just received. That story is just wow. And it leads us to a really simple but profound way to think about our own approach in our own work. It's about being brutally honest about the level of service you're actually providing. So you have to ask yourself this question. Right now, today, in your job, are you a Holiday Inn or are you a Ritz-Carlton? And you got to be honest with yourself. And the difference is night and day. If you're a Holiday Inn, yeah, the price is lower, but the service is minimal. The attitude is kind of, I don't really care. And what does that lead to? Constant arguments about price. But the Ritz-Carlton, it costs more, for sure, but you get abundant service. The whole vibe is we are here for you, and that creates incredible value and loyalty. The price just becomes a non-issue. Because you have to remember, buyers will happily, gladly pay a premium for the experience. They'll pay more for great service, for a great attitude, to make the whole process easy and convenient, and for that feeling of being treated like they're special. That's worth more than any discount. Okay, so let's tie this all together. In this last section, we're going to see how this whole philosophy of giving and service becomes your ultimate, unbeatable strategy for winning in the long run. And here's the bottom line. It's this simple. Service is the only way to higher prices and less competition. That's it. That's your ticket out of the endless, miserable race to the bottom on price. You know, this mindset totally changes how you see problems. Most people run away from a customer complaint, right? You should run towards it. A problem is a golden opportunity. It's your chance to step in, handle it personally, and show them what you're made of. You completely separate yourself from the competition. And that's how you build rock-solid trust and earn the right to sell to them for life. And the rewards when you adopt this give, give, give philosophy, they're huge. And it's so much more than just making more sales. We're talking about the freedom to basically name your price, to work only with the clients you actually want to work with, to build this unshakable confidence that lets you provide for your family and live without that constant stress and worry that comes from always trying to get. So, we end right back where we started, with a question just for you. After hearing all this, which one are you? Are you a getter or are you a giver? Are you a Holiday Inn or are you a Ritz-Carlton? Because that answer is going to define everything.
All right, let's jump right in. We're going to tackle a term that makes a lot of people in sales kind of nervous, the hard sell. But I want you to just forget everything you think you know about it, all the high-pressure stuff. We're here today to completely redefine what it actually means to be a master closer.
I mean, you've probably heard this before, right? Ugh, this one sentence can stop a deal dead in its tracks. It's that classic pushback, that moment of discomfort that makes most salespeople just run for the hills. But what if it wasn't a stop sign? What if it was actually a signal to reframe the entire conversation?
And that's exactly what we're going to do. Because, that feeling of being pushy, it holds so many of us back. So we are going to strip away all that negative baggage and rebuild the idea of the hard sell from the ground up on a totally different foundation, a foundation of pure, unshakable conviction. So let's be honest for a second. When you hear the term hard sell, what pops into your head? Probably some super aggressive, pushy salesperson who just won't take no for an answer, right? Yeah, that's the common perception. But the source material for this explainer argues that view, well, it completely misses the point.
And here it is. This is the new definition. It's not about force, it's about faith. The hard sell is really about your willingness to persist through that discomfort because you truly, deeply believe your product is the absolute right choice for the buyer. It's being so sold on what you have that a little awkwardness is worth it to help someone make the best decision.
This really breaks down that mental shift, doesn't it? We're moving from pressure to belief, from aggression to passion, and you're not doing manipulation, you're practicing persistence. This isn't just playing with words, you guys. It's a fundamental change in your entire approach that lets you stay in that conversation with total integrity. And check this out. This is the actual script you can use to make that shift happen right in the moment. When a client hits you with the "you're pressuring me" line, you say this. Notice how it's not defensive at all. It just recontextualizes your energy as genuine enthusiasm. And then boom, it confidently moves things forward. It's just a masterclass in controlling the frame. Okay, so what does this actually look like in the real world? It sounds good, right? But how does it play out?
Well, the source material gives us this brilliant story about a master fundraiser named Charmaine, and this really illustrates the concept perfectly.
So here's the setup, and it's a classic tough spot. Charmaine asks for a meeting, but the prospect has already said he's totally done with donations for the year. I mean, done. Most people would just say, okay, thanks, and hang up. But not Charmaine. She persisted just to get in the room.
And when she finally gets the meeting and brings up donating again, wow, the reaction is just explosive. This is that super hard no. It's emotional, it's emphatic. This is that exact moment of extreme discomfort we were just talking about.
But just look at her response. She doesn't even flinch. She doesn't get defensive. She doesn't apologize. She's just totally calm, cool, and collected with a smile. Why? Because her belief in her mission was way bigger than the awkwardness of his little outburst.
And then comes the genius part, the masterstroke. She completely reframes his resistance. She doesn't argue. She just interprets his big emotional reaction as proof that he actually agrees with her on a deeper level. I mean, that is an incredibly bold and insightful move. And guess what? It worked. He laughed and ended up giving more. So why did it work? Because Charmaine was so completely sold on her cause that she was willing to sit in that fire, in that uncomfortable moment. She didn't see his no as a door slamming shut. She saw it as a challenge that just needed more conviction. Now that is the true hard sell in action.
So the crucial point is, how can you do this? How can you develop that same level of conviction, that same poise that Charmaine had? Well, let's break it down. It's actually a pretty simple two-part formula. It all boils down to two pillars. First, you need that unshakable belief. You have to be so convinced that what you have is the right thing for the customer that it would actually be a disservice for them not to buy it. And second, unwavering training. You've got to be so well-rehearsed that you can stay in the close no matter what happens. All right, let's get super practical now. Belief is the foundation, sure, but the training, that's how you build the skyscraper on top of it. So let's talk about how to become a pro with the specific practice and positioning you need.
Look, this isn't about winging it. It's about a daily training regimen. You got to team up with a colleague and practice. Role play every single objection and stall you can think of. When you hear a new objection out in the field, write it down, then go practice it. You can even videotape yourself to see how you come across. You just have to drill until your responses are completely natural.
Okay, now for a really powerful tactical tip. It's this simple phrase. It sounds kind of catchy, but there's a deep psychological truth packed into it. It's about how your physical posture can literally change the entire dynamic of the sale.
And here's why that's so crucial. People are skeptical. Talk is cheap, right? Anyone can make claims. But when you physically sit someone down and show them their proposal, the numbers, the proof, it becomes real. It's tangible. You're shifting the entire conversation from just telling them something to actually showing them the truth.
So the closing position is really a simple two-step process. Step 1, sit your client down. Step 2, show them the facts, the figures, the proposal. Don't just talk at them, put the papers on the table and walk them through it. This simple physical act, it's the posture of a serious closer.
And that brings us to the big question you need to ask yourself. What is the one belief you have about your product that is so strong it's worth getting a little uncomfortable for? Because the hard sell, when you really get it, isn't a tactic. It's just an expression of your deepest conviction. Find that belief and you'll have found the real secret.
All right, let's dive in. Today, we're talking about a philosophy that basically tells you to take everything you've learned about taking it easy and throw it right out the window. The core idea? If you're after truly extraordinary results, you've got to put in an extraordinary amount of effort. This is the whole philosophy behind massive action. And this quote right here, it just sets the tone perfectly, doesn't it? The argument is that when you start taking truly massive action, you are going to get pushback. People are going to tell you to slow down, to be more reasonable. This philosophy says, hey, that criticism, that's not a red flag. That's actually a sign that you're finally doing enough to get noticed. So that leads us right to this question. I mean, we're told all the time to relax, find that balance, don't burn yourself out. But what if that's the very thing holding you back? What if taking it easy is actually just a recipe for an average, mediocre life? So, where do we even begin with this? Well, the first target is a big one. It's an idea that's almost sacred these days, the whole pursuit of a balanced life. Yeah, the argument is pretty blunt about it. The whole concept of work-life balance is basically a trap. It's framed as this ideal that actually keeps you from going all in, from dedicating yourself so completely to a goal that you can't help but knock it out of the park. Now, here's an idea that's going to feel completely backwards to most of us. We usually think of work as draining our energy, right? But this philosophy suggests the total opposite. It says that high levels of production and accomplishment are actually what give you energy. Action creates momentum, and that momentum creates even more energy. Okay, so if balance is out the window, what's the alternative? Well, the source material breaks down all our effort into this really clear framework. It's called the 4 degrees of action. These are the 4 levels. First, you've got no action. Pretty obvious, you get nothing. Then there's wrong action, which is just spinning your wheels in the wrong direction. Then you have right action. And honestly, this is what most people are aiming for, doing the correct things. But there's a 4th level. This is the one that separates the absolute legends from everyone else. Massive action.
So what even is massive action, really? It's not just about working hard or being busy. It's about operating at a volume of effort that is so huge, so over the top, that it all but guarantees you're going to hit your target. It's about overwhelming the problem with just sheer, relentless activity. And to really hammer this point home, the author credits this one single principle as the key thing that changed everything for them. It's not presented as some nice little tip, but as the fundamental, non-negotiable requirement for achieving anything great. But here's a twist. Taking massive action, it doesn't lead to a life with no problems. Nope. In fact, it does the exact opposite. It creates a whole new class of problems. You know you're taking enough action when your problems start to change. You stop worrying about a lack of opportunity, and you start worrying about how on earth you're going to manage all the opportunity you've just created. I mean, the difference is just night and day. Instead of stressing because you don't have enough appointments, your new problem is a calendar that is totally packed. Instead of a slow business, your problem is figuring out where to seat all your new customers. See? These are the good problems, the kind that only come from real success. And here's the kind of funny way to look at it. The problems that come with success are things like having a giant tax bill because you made so much money, or deciding which new car to buy. According to this way of thinking, those are the problems you should be shooting for. Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, but how do you actually apply this? Well, the philosophy is backed by a very simple, very practical rule. Here it is, the 10x rule. Whatever goal you have, and whatever amount of effort you think you need to put in to get there, multiply it by 10. That number, that's your new baseline. That's your starting point. Just think about that for a second. Not 10% more, not double the effort, 10 times. It's a call to completely rethink what we believe it actually takes to win. Let's make this super concrete. Say your goal is 1 new appointment. If you only plan for 1 and that person cancels, well, that's a disaster. But if you make 10 times the number of calls and you have a dozen appointments lined up, 1 cancellation is actually a relief. It frees up your time. 10x action basically makes you immune to what other people call bad luck. And this brings us to the final, core mindset. It's a complete shift from waiting around for things to happen to making them happen on a completely unreasonable scale. You know, adopting this really does require a different way of thinking. You have to be willing to act with an intensity that other people are probably going to call crazy. The whole idea is to make up for any lack of polish or perfection with just a sheer, overwhelming volume of action. And the ultimate payoff isn't just external success. A core belief here is that the very act of producing, of creating, of getting things done in huge quantities is a direct source of happiness and fulfillment all by itself. Ultimately, everything we've talked about really just boils down to this one simple, powerful command. Don't wait, don't hope, don't be a spectator in your own life. Go massive. And that leaves us with a final thought, a question for you. Just for a second, forget about what's reasonable or balanced. If you were to pick one area of your life and apply 10 times the effort you thought was needed, what would it be? And what do you think might happen if you started today?
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are cracking open a concept from Grant Cardone's Sell or Be Sold that could seriously change the way you see your work, your career, and even your relationships. It's all about a hidden asset that every single one of us has, but almost no one uses the right way.
All right, let's get into it. We're going to kick things off by identifying a huge mistake that costs people a fortune. Then we'll pull back the curtain on your own personal gold mine, show you exactly how to map it out, and this is a big one, how to reach out without that feeling of dread. From there, we'll get into expanding your circle and wrap it all up with a true story that really reveals the ultimate secret.
So first up, let's talk about the single most common and definitely the most costly mistake people make in any field where you have to, persuade someone.
It's a huge question, right? One that can literally define a career. Companies spend billions trying to figure this out, but according to Cardone, the answer is sitting right there in front of us, and we don't see it.
And there it is. The mistake is focusing all of our time, our energy, and our money on chasing strangers. I'm talking about people you don't know, who don't know you, and who have absolutely zero reason to trust you. It's a high-effort, low-reward game. All the while, we're completely ignoring the people who already know us, like us, and trust us.
Cardone really hammers this point home. It's a basic, fundamental principle that gets broken every single day. We're sort of taught to always be looking for that new lead, that stranger, while we let our most valuable connections just sit there, totally unused.
Okay, so if chasing strangers is the problem, what's the solution? Well, the answer is way simpler and a lot more powerful than you might think.
The solution is what Cardone calls your power base. Now, this isn't some complicated marketing tactic, it's just your network, the people you already know. It's your personal fan club, your circle of influence, the people who are already on your side and ready to listen.
Now pay really close attention to that last part of the quote, and want to help you. We forget this all the time. The people in our power base, they genuinely want to see us do well. They're often just waiting for a chance to support us.
So this all sounds great, right? But how do you actually start tapping into this resource? It's not about just thinking about it. It's about taking real, concrete steps.
The process is actually pretty simple. First, you've got to make a physical list of every single person you can think of. No judging, no editing, just get the names down. Second, you have to realize that list is just the start. Every single person on it is a door to their own network. And third, you just make contact. The goal at first isn't to sell anything, it's just to say hi, to reconnect.
And this just shows you how wide you need to cast your net. It's not just your best friends, okay? It's everyone. Old coworkers, your neighbors, people from your gym. Cardone even says to include people you used to argue with in high school. And you might ask why? Because any past connection, even a rocky one, is still stronger than no connection at all.
Okay, now we're at the part that trips most people up. That fear of reaching out. That little voice in your head that says you're being a bother, that you're imposing. Let's just tear that idea apart, shall we?
This is the key. You have to shift your mindset. We get so worried that we're asking for something that we completely forget what we're offering. Cardone says you have to reframe this entire thing.
So here's the bottom line. If you truly believe in what you do, if you believe in your product or your service, then you are not imposing. You are helping. You're giving them an opportunity. Come on, think about it. Someone is going to sell something to your friends and family, so why on earth shouldn't it be you?
To really see the raw power of this, Cardone tells this great story about a friend from his power base. He calls him up with this incredible sense of urgency.
So his friend shows up, and Cardone doesn't give some long, drawn-out presentation. There's no fancy slide deck, no big explanation.
He just hands him a blank buyer's order and says, "Sign it." And the friend signs, instantly, without even knowing what he's buying. That transaction had nothing to do with features or benefits. It was based 100% on the relationship that was already there. That is the power of the power base.
So once you've reconnected with your immediate circle, that's when the real magic starts to happen. The next step is to strategically and consciously start growing that influence outward. But as you do this, you've got to remember this one core idea. Don't get hung up on saying the perfect thing or having the perfect script. Just being creative and taking massive action will always, always beat being timid and trying to be perfect. The only real mistake you can make is not reaching out at all.
And just look at how fast this can grow. The math is really simple, but it's also incredibly powerful. Let's say you have just 10 friends. Well, on average, that could be about 22 people in their immediate households. But here's the kicker. Each of those 22 people has their own network. Your reach isn't just adding up, it's multiplying. It grows exponentially.
Finally, let's tie this all together with a true story from the book that shows the absolutely life-changing potential of this one simple strategy.
So this story is about Cardone's friend, Dale. Picture this. He's 52 years old, has zero experience in real estate, and is basically broke. But he had one asset he hadn't used yet, his power base, which just so happened to include Grant Cardone. By just being the middleman, by connecting a person in his power base, in this case, Cardone, with opportunities he was finding, Dale helped make the purchase of over 1,900 real estate units happen. He wasn't the expert. He was the connector. He was just leveraging the trust he already had. And the result of that? Dale became a multimillionaire. This isn't some made-up example. It's a real-life story that proves your greatest asset isn't some new fancy marketing trick. It's the people who already know your name. So the big takeaway here is this. Stop chasing strangers and start nurturing the relationships you already have. Your network really is your net worth. That gold mine is right there, right under your feet. The only question left is, are you ready to start digging? All right, let's dive in. Today, we're tackling what is maybe the biggest excuse in business, and in life, really. I just don't have enough time. But what if that feeling wasn't a fact? What if it's actually a lie? We're going to show you how to call yourself on that lie and find hours in your day you never even knew you had.
So let's start with a really simple question for you. How much time do you actually have? I mean, most of us feel like we're constantly running on empty, always a step behind. But what if we've been looking at the clock all wrong?
Think about this for a second. It's a simple, undeniable truth. The most successful person you can possibly imagine, the richest CEO, the greatest athlete, they get the exact same 24 hours as you do, the same 168 hours a week. When it comes to the clock, the playing field is completely, totally level. And that brings us to the core, kind of provocative idea from our source material today. That phrase, "I don't have enough time," it's not just a little white lie or an exaggeration. It's a damaging lie you're telling yourself. That feeling of being rushed and overwhelmed, it's not a reflection of reality. It's just a symptom of how you're spending your time.
So, what is this lie actually costing you? Let's break down the numbers. We're going to look at what most of us consider harmless, free time, and uncover the massive, hidden opportunity cost that's hiding in plain sight.
So, get this. According to our source, the average person watches 3 hours of television every single day. Now, that might feel like a totally normal way to unwind after work, but when you add it all up, the cumulative cost is just staggering.
Over a single year, those 3 little hours a day, they balloon into 67,500 minutes. Just let that sink in for a moment. 67,500 minutes. That's not just a little TV. That is a huge, untapped resource that's getting poured down the drain of passive entertainment year after year.
So the real question is, what could you do with that time? Well, let's put it in business terms. Let's say a good sales call takes just 3 minutes. With that time, you could make an extra 22,500 of them in a year. I mean, think about that. An extra 22,500 chances to close a deal. That kind of activity could launch you into the top 1% of basically any industry.
Now, let's move from the abstract numbers to a really powerful story that shows how this waste happens in ways that seem totally normal, until someone flips on the lights and you see what you've been missing all along.
So, picture this really common routine. Taking a break, grabbing lunch with a coworker. It seems harmless, right? It even seems like a good thing, team building and all that. But if you look at it from a pure opportunity standpoint, what is really happening during that hour?
This single piece of advice from a mentor changed absolutely everything. It hit the author, in his own words, like a truckload of gold bricks. It was this sudden, shocking moment of clarity, realizing his daily habit was a complete and total dead end for his career. And this is where the real cost becomes painfully clear. A quick bit of math showed he was spending 312 hours a year. That's nearly 8 full work weeks in a situation with zero, and I mean zero, chance of making a sale. 8 weeks of his professional life, gone. As you can probably guess, he never went to lunch with Gene again.
Now, this epiphany didn't just stop a bad habit. It kicked off a powerful new strategy. He completely transformed that 1-hour break from a time waster into a daily goldmine for opportunity. This slide really breaks down the two mindsets. On one side, you have the amateur who's playing defense. They're focused on saving $10 on a sandwich. But on the other side, you have the pro. They go on offense. They use that same hour to hunt for a massive deal by meeting with clients and prospects. One person is stuck in a scarcity mindset. The other is all about abundance.
And this all leads to a really clear 3-step strategy for that lunch hour. First, you hunt. You actively go looking for people who can say yes to what you're offering. Second, you have to be seen. Go where your potential customers are. And third, you spend your time with buyers. You engage with them, not your coworkers. For example, don't sit with your business partner at a client lunch. Split up and work the room to double your exposure.
This quote just perfectly captures the entire philosophy here. Playing it safe, pinching pennies, that's a slow defensive game. The real path to huge success is proactive. It's about creating opportunities, getting in front of the right people, and just making things happen.
And this is so crucial to understand. This isn't just about your lunch break. This is about a fundamental shift in how you see every single minute of your day, every interaction, and every choice you make.
It all starts with a few key decisions you have to make in your head. First, change how you think about time itself. Second, stop seeing it as this rare thing you're always running out of and decide that you have an abundance of it. Third, you have to realize that you are in control, not the clock. And finally, you break free from your old schedule. You dictate your time. It no longer dictates you.
And that is the ultimate goal here. You want to become a master of the clock, not a slave to it. You move from being reactive, just letting the day happen to you, to being proactive, making every single moment serve your bigger goals. Every minute becomes an asset, something to be invested wisely. So we'll leave you with a challenge. Think about your next lunch. Instead of seeing it as a break from work, what if you treated it as your most important meeting of the day? Who would you meet? Where would you go? Just think, how could that one small change, compounded over a year, completely transform your results? All right, let's dive into a pretty bold claim from author Grant Cardone. The idea is that a positive attitude isn't just some nice little bonus, it's actually the single most valuable asset you can have. So let's see if he's right. So right out of the gate, here it is. This is the core argument, and it's a big one. He's saying the feeling someone gives you is literally worth more. We're talking cold, hard cash than the quality of the thing they're selling. That kind of goes against everything we think we know about business, right? And I know what you're thinking, because I thought it too. Seriously, more than a great product? We live in a world that's obsessed with features and specs and the latest and greatest thing. How on earth could attitude beat all that? Well, let's break it down. Okay, so let's get into the psychology of this. Why is it that a great attitude can actually outperform a great product, time and time again? So here's the key. At the end of the day, we are emotional beings. You know, we can rationally say no to a product or a price or a company. That's easy. But it is so much harder to say no to a person who just makes you feel good, someone who's positive and makes the whole interaction enjoyable. We are just wired to want more of that good feeling. And this is what the source defines as the ultimate, priceless asset. See, it's not about being happy when things are going great. Anyone can do that. It's about having the ability to keep that positive, service-first mindset no matter what's happening, when you're winning, when you're losing, always. That, according to the source, is what's truly priceless. Theory is one thing, right? But how does this actually look in the real world? Let's check out a couple of stories from the source material that really make this idea click. Okay, just picture this super simple scenario. You've got two valets. They both park the exact same car in the exact same spot. The first guy, he acts like you're a total inconvenience, doesn't crack a smile, and he gets a $5 tip. The other guy, he greets you with a huge smile, calls you boss, makes you feel like $1 million. He gets $20, 4 times more for doing the exact same job. The only difference? Attitude. That's it. All right, so let's up the stakes a bit. A high-pressure negotiation. A customer walks onto the lot, walls are way up, and he lays down the law. I will not pay 1 penny over the invoice price for that truck. Now, this is where most people would get defensive and start arguing. But just look at this response. It's completely disarming. Instead of fighting back, the salesperson just agrees with a smile. He totally sidesteps the conflict and just focuses on making the customer feel good, feel heard, feel appreciated. The next hour was spent just building that positive connection. And the result? The punchline of this whole story? The customer who walked in swearing he wouldn't pay a dime over invoice,
He willingly paid an extra $2,000 on top of the invoice price and all the taxes. Why? Because he wasn't just buying a truck anymore. He was buying the experience.
And this is the brilliant line that sealed the deal. When the customer mentioned he could probably get the truck cheaper somewhere else, the salesperson agreed. He said, "You're probably right." But then he added, "But you won't get me down the street." You can shop around for a product, you can't shop around for a great attitude.
So if an attitude like this is that powerful, it's pretty obvious it's something worth protecting, right? Which brings us to our next big idea. You have to actively guard your mindset from all the negativity out there.
Here's the bottom line. Your attitude does not exist in a vacuum. It is a direct result of everything you let in. The media you consume, the people you hang out with, the information you allow into your brain, it all shapes who you are.
And the source is super direct about what it calls mental garbage. It argues that stuff like the Daily News, which is almost always focused on fear and problems, or people who are always negative and gossiping, that stuff is poison for your mindset. Think about it. You wouldn't let somebody dump their actual trash in your house, so why would you let them dump their mental trash in your head?
Okay, so we know what to avoid, but what can we actually do? Let's get into our final section, the Positivity Playbook, for some real, actionable steps you can take to build and protect a great attitude.
Here is a super simple but incredibly powerful rule. Just make your space, your home, your office, even your car, a no negative talk zone. You just don't allow it. When someone starts complaining or gossiping, you just politely change the subject. You treat that negativity like the garbage it is, and you refuse to let it pile up around you.
Now this might be the most practical tool of them all. It's like a game you play with yourself. For 24 hours, you commit to absolutely zero negative thoughts or talk. But the second you catch yourself slipping up, you have to restart the clock. The goal isn't to be perfect right away. It's about building that muscle of awareness, of realizing just how often those negative thoughts try to creep in so you can finally start to get control over them. And let's be really clear, this is not just about making more money. As this quote puts it so powerfully, your attitude is the foundation for, well, everything. It seeps into your relationships, your health, your opportunities, literally every single part of your life.
So that really brings us to the final question, and this one is for you to take away. After hearing all this, what's one piece of mental garbage, one source of negativity that you're going to stop letting into your life, starting right now?
You know, what if the biggest sale you ever make isn't for a product, but for a person? Well, today we're going to dive into a story from master salesman Grant Cardone. He actually used the exact same principles from High Stakes Business Deal to win over the woman he was convinced he was going to marry. It's an incredible masterclass in persuasion. And it all kicks off with this single thought. For Cardone, this wasn't some, maybe or someday kind of thing. No, it was this immediate, unshakable conviction. He'd literally just met Elena, but in his mind, the deal was already closed. He was 100% sold on a future with her. Okay, but here's the thing. There was just one massive hurdle. During that very first meeting, she had zero interest. Like, he might as well have been invisible. So we're not talking about a tough sell here. We're talking about a complete and total shutdown right from the get-go. So what do you even do when your target customer doesn't see you? I mean, how do you start a conversation with a brick wall, right? This is where we get to the first, and honestly, probably the most crucial principle of any big sale. This right here, this is the foundation for the entire story. Even though he was being completely ignored, Cardone's conviction just did not waver. His belief in their future had to be stronger than her skepticism. I mean, think about it. In any negotiation, if you're not sold on your own product, what chance do you have of convincing anyone else? Zero. And he didn't just, passively believe it. He actively worked on strengthening that belief. He basically treated himself as the product. He took inventory, writing down this whole list of every single quality he could bring to a relationship. He was pretty much reselling himself on his own value, building this rock-solid foundation before he even tried to approach her again. So once his own belief was rock solid, he launched what you can only call a relentless campaign. And listen, we're not talking about a couple of follow-up calls here. This was a year-long strategic pursuit, and it was all done in the face of total, unbroken silence. Now, this timeline, wow. This really puts his persistence into perspective. Just look at this. From day one, total disinterest.
Then a whole year of leaving these positive messages every single month. And the result after all that effort? Absolute silence. Not one single returned call. Can you even imagine that level of commitment? By his count, it was about 13. 13 messages, just sent out into the void with absolutely nothing coming back. You could say each one of those calls was just another brick in this wall of rejection he was up against. But here's the key. He wasn't just being blindly persistent. He was being strategic. He started working his power base, which is a core sales idea. It just means using your network, right? So he didn't just have her number. He had people on the inside, like a mutual friend who could give him intel and maybe even put in a good word. Okay, so after a full year of this, something finally shifts. He gets a little piece of feedback. Not from her, of course, but through that friend. And this is the turning point. This is the moment he gets his first real clue about what's actually going on in her head. And this leads to a critical question that every great salesperson has to ask. When someone gives you a reason for saying no, is that the real reason? Is that the actual obstacle? Or is it just a smokescreen? You know, a polite excuse designed to make you go away. And here's exactly what he found out. On one side, you've got the surface level complaints she was telling her friend. Things like, oh, he's too short, or ugh, I don't like businessmen. You know, he's just not my type. But Cardone was smart enough to know these were just excuses. The real objection, the actual problem he had to solve, was something else entirely. He hadn't given her a single compelling reason to be interested because he hadn't connected with what she actually valued. So once he figured out the difference between the complaints and the real obstacle, he knew his whole approach had to change. It was time to completely scrap his old pitch and build a brand new one. One that had nothing to do with him and everything to do with her. And where did he get this game-changing piece of info? Get this. It came from his competition. Seriously, another guy who was also trying to date Elena, without even realizing it, handed him the key to unlocking the whole thing. You just can't make this stuff up. And this really is the golden rule of persuasion, and it changed absolutely everything for him. He realized that his entire year-long campaign had been about what he wanted. He had to completely flip the script and focus on what she was interested in. So what was her passion? And here it is, the key. It had nothing to do with business or his personality. It was clay shooting. And she wasn't just messing around with it as a hobby. No, she was an elite competitive shooter. This was that one, unique, personal passion that was going to be the foundation for his winning offer. So this new info led to a totally new strategy. I mean, he didn't just mention her hobby, he went all in. First, he discovers her true passion is clay shooting. Then, he rents out the entire LA gun club for a Saturday. He hires the best shooting coach in all of Los Angeles. And then, he calls and offers her a day of shooting. It was an offer so perfectly tailored to her passion, it was basically impossible for her to say no. So, after all that, what was the result of this perfect pitch? Okay, remember, 365 days of silence, 13 unanswered messages. After making this offer, it took her exactly 60 seconds to call him back. 1 minute. That's the incredible power you get when you stop focusing on what you want and start focusing on what they value. And really, this story is so much more than just some cute romance. It's a straight-up masterclass in persuasion. It proves that being able to sell is a fundamental life skill that affects literally every part of our lives. So let's just quickly recap the key principles we saw in action here. First, you have to be 100% sold on your own goal. You've got to persist, even through tons of rejection. Work your network, your power base. Learn to tell the difference between a complaint and a real objection. Make it all about the other person. And finally, give value, give more value, and then give some more without expecting anything in return. And if you need any more proof, here's the ultimate validation, coming straight from Elena herself. She said his conviction and complete knowingness about them as a couple was very difficult to resist. Now notice what she's saying. She didn't see it as pushy or aggressive. She saw it as someone who had a clear vision and, more importantly, was willing to do the work to figure out what really mattered to her. And that really is the core takeaway here. It doesn't matter if you're selling a product, trying to pitch an idea at work, or even building a relationship. Your ability to understand, connect with, and persuade other people, that is the single most important skill you need to turn what you want into a reality. So, I'll leave you with this question to think about.
If you apply these same principles to your own life, what is the biggest, most important sale you need to make right now? And maybe even more important, what's the real objection you need to solve to finally close that deal? Ever feel like your sales pitches are just falling flat? Like you're doing everything you're supposed to, but it's just not connecting? Well, today we're going to break down a modern framework designed to completely change that. Let's dive into Grant Cardone's 5-step method for a sales process that's way faster, simpler, and just plain more effective.
So let me ask you a question and be honest. Is your sales process stuck in the past? You know, if you're getting tired of those really long, drawn-out pitches that just don't seem to land with today's buyers, you are definitely not alone. So let's figure out why the old ways just aren't cutting it anymore, and more importantly, what we can do about it.
Okay, let's get right to the heart of the problem. Grant Cardone calls it the 50-year disconnect. And it's so true. For half a century, sales techniques have pretty much stayed the same, while the customer has changed completely. It's kind of like we're trying to send a fax to someone's smartphone. It's time to bridge that gap.
And this slide just lays out the clash perfectly. On one hand, you have the old school tactics, controlling the customer, holding back information, taking up tons of their time. But on the other hand, look at today's buyer. They're informed, they've done their research, their time is everything. And they make buying decisions all the time. It's a total mismatch, and it's costing people sales.
So how do you know if your process is the problem? Here are 3 big questions to ask yourself. First, are your profits kind of lower than they should be? Second, are people complaining about how long it takes to actually get a deal done? And third, does it feel like they're constantly fighting resistance from customers? If you're nodding your head to any of these, yeah, it's definitely time for a change. All right, so we've diagnosed the problem. You ready for the antidote to all that outdated selling? Let's get into the 3 core principles, the pillars of what a perfect modern sales process actually looks like. Pillar number 1 is so important. It has to be fast. Look, we live in a world of instant gratification, right? The ultimate way to show a customer you respect them is to respect their time. That means cutting out all the fluff and getting right to the point, quickly and efficiently. And that leads us to pillar number 2, simple. The rule here is simple. You have to be absolutely ruthless. If a step in your process doesn't add value for the customer or make things faster, it's gotta go. A clean, simple process is just a better experience for everybody involved, no question. And pillar number 3, maybe the most important of all, transparency. This is how you build trust in today's world. It means being totally open, totally honest through the entire process. No hidden tricks, no secret agendas, just straight up, clear communication. You know, this quote from Grant Cardone is the perfect gut check. If you can't advertise any part of what you are doing, then there is something not okay with it. I mean, just think about that. It's the ultimate test, the gold standard for having integrity in your process. Okay, so we've got our guiding principles: fast, simple, and transparent. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's talk about the 5 actual steps, the blueprint you can use for a modern sales win. So here they are. 1, greet. 2, determine their wants and needs. 3, select the product and present the value. 4, make a proposal. And 5, close the deal. Now, I know it might sound basic on the surface, but the real secret, the key to huge success, is in mastering every single one of these stages. So, step 1, the greeting. Let's be clear, this isn't about making small talk for 10 minutes. The real goal is to make a powerful first impression, put the buyer at ease, and right away show them that you value their time. You're setting a professional, efficient tone from the very first moment. Step 2, determining wants and needs, is summed up perfectly by this quote. Your job isn't to sell a drill, it's to find out why they need a hole. What's the real problem they're trying to solve? Shifting your mindset from being a product pusher to a problem solver, well, that changes everything. And finding out what they really need leads you perfectly into step 3, the presentation. This is where you connect the dots for them. You take everything they told you was important and show them exactly how your product is the solution. It's a laser-focused demonstration of value, not just a generic pitch. Now get ready for this number, because it is absolutely staggering. A study found that 63% of companies never even get around to making a formal proposal to a potential client. That is a massive self-inflicted wound. Think of all the missed opportunities.
which makes step 4 completely non-negotiable. You have to always make a proposal. It sounds obvious, but you can't close a deal if you never actually ask for it. Presenting figures to 100% of your qualified prospects is the only way to move the conversation forward. And finally, we land at step 5, closing the deal. This is where the magic really happens, and Cardone is so clear about this. Closing is a totally separate skill from selling. It's an art. It takes confidence, it takes skill, and you have to master handling objections to turn that "I'll think about it" into a firm yes. So after going through all of this, how can you be absolutely sure your process is up to snuff? Well, it all comes down to what Grant Cardone calls the ultimate litmus test, the billboard test. But first, one last critical point on who your process should serve. And the hierarchy is not what you might think. The customer comes first, always. The salesperson comes second, and management, they come last. Why? Because think about it. If the process doesn't work for the customer and the salesperson hates doing it, it's doomed to fail. It will never, ever work for management. And that all leads to this final powerful question that ties everything together. Could you advertise your entire sales process, step by step, on a giant billboard for the entire world to see? If you can honestly, confidently say yes to that, then you've built a winning process. But if you hesitate even for a second, then you know exactly where you need to get to work.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really radical idea, based on the work of Grant Cardone. What if success wasn't just, an option you could choose? What if it was your absolute duty? Let's get into it.
All right, let's kick things off with a number that should really make you stop and think. According to the source, a staggering 98% of people, they never even come close to the level of success they actually have the potential for. Just let that sink in. For every 100 people you know, only 2 are really firing on all cylinders.
So that immediately begs the question, right? Why? Is the game just rigged against pretty much everyone, or is there something else going on? Well, according to this framework, the problem isn't out there. Nope, it's all in here. It's about your mindset. And here it is, the core of the problem. The reason that 98% number is just so incredibly high, it's because most of us treat success like a lottery ticket. A maybe, a possibility, something that, it might happen if the stars align. It's just an option, not a necessity.
See, this option way of thinking, it leads directly to a life filled with excuses. We start leaving our success up to things we think we can't control. Oh, the economy's bad, or the timing just isn't right, or my personal favorite, I'm just not that lucky. We're basically waiting for success to show up at our door, and when it doesn't, well, we've got a whole list of reasons why it's not our fault.
So what's the fix? Well, it's not a small tweak. It demands a complete mental rewiring. You have to stop seeing success as this casual option and start treating it as your personal duty, your obligation, your absolute responsibility.
Now this is about way more than just working harder. It's about reframing success as an ethical issue. Think about it for a second. A good parent will do whatever it takes to care for their child. It is not an option. This mindset says you have to apply that exact same life or death level of commitment to fulfilling your own potential. This slide just lays it all out, doesn't it? The contrast is so clear. On the left, you've got this passive hope, just waiting for things to happen. But on the right, you have an active, relentless, I will not be denied pursuit. One side waits for the world to give them a chance. The other side forces that chance to exist through sheer effort and taking ownership.
So here's the crucial point. The second you let success become a maybe in your mind, you've already lost. A lack of 100% commitment is a guarantee of failure before you even start.
Okay, so if we're going to adopt this duty mindset, we've got to start demolishing the mental roadblocks that are holding us back. And the very first one we have to tear down, the whole idea of luck. The source material is crystal clear on this one. Lucky people aren't just born that way. What we look at from the outside and call luck is almost always just the result of someone taking more action, showing up more often, and being more prepared than anyone else. They just create so many opportunities that, eventually one of them is going to look like a lucky break.
Now, this next mental barrier, it's even sneakier because it's a form of self-deception. It's the habit of justifying our failures, of feeding ourselves these little stories and excuses for why we didn't get what we wanted. This simple story right here, man, it perfectly illustrates this powerful and honestly really destructive psychological trick we play on ourselves.
After we've tried and failed, instead of looking in the mirror and taking responsibility, we just change the entire narrative in our heads to soften the blow. We start pretending the goal wasn't really that important to begin with.
And this is where you got to be brutally honest with yourself. When you miss a target, when you fail to close a deal, do you really sit down and analyze what you could have done differently? Or do you find yourself justifying it, pretending you never really wanted it that bad in the first place?
This slide just captures that internal monologue perfectly, doesn't it? Blaming the customer, the price, the timing. It all does one thing. It shifts responsibility away from you. And this self-deception, it's guaranteed to kill your drive. Because why would you take massive action for something you've convinced yourself isn't that important anyway?
Okay, so how do we actually put this into practice? To truly make success your duty, you need a new set of operating instructions, like a mission protocol that leaves absolutely no room for maybes or excuses.
So here they are, the 5 non-negotiable rules from the source material to really burn this mindset into your daily life. It all starts with total responsibility. Then you frame success as your duty. You demand relentless action. You reject all excuses, period. And you focus on preparing every single day. This is the blueprint.
You know, if there's one core idea to take away from all of this, it's right here on the screen. Living up to the potential that you possess. It isn't some casual journey you take only when the weather is nice. No. It's a destination you have a responsibility to fight your way to, no matter what obstacles stand in your way.
And that really just leaves us with one final provocative thought. If success isn't some job you can just quit when you feel like it, but a duty you've been assigned for life, then the only real question left to answer is, when are you clocking in? All right, let's dive into the modern sales training playbook. You know, no matter what you do for a living, you're in sales. You're selling an idea, a product, yourself, and how you prepare for that is pretty much everything. So let's get into it.
I mean, just think about it for a second. Any person at the absolute top of their game, an athlete, a musician, a surgeon, what's the one thing they all do? They train. They practice relentlessly. They drill and rehearse until the right moves are just pure instinct. This isn't just about repetition. It's about embedding excellence into their DNA.
And that brings us to this really weird question, right? If practice is the secret sauce for everyone else who performs at a high level, why does so many people in sales, probably one of the most competitive jobs on the planet, just skip it? It's a question that's costing people a ton of money.
So, let's nail down the first principle. You have to train like a professional. This isn't just about showing up. It's about doing the work behind the scenes so that when you step into the ring, you're not just hoping to win, you're expecting to.
Okay, check out this contrast because it says it all. You've got the Navy SEAL on one side. They are so deeply immersed in training that their instinct in a high-pressure moment is to push forward, to attack the problem. Then you have the untrained salesperson. Their instinct, it's often to hesitate, to back off. And that tiny moment of hesitation, that's where the deal dies.
And this really gets to a key point. Where are you investing your time and money? Look, a nice suit is great. It makes a solid first impression. But the suit doesn't handle objections. It doesn't close the deal. Your words do. Your strategy does. It's like a baseball player spending a fortune on a custom bat, but never going to the batting cage. It just doesn't make sense.
All right, so if we all agree training is critical, then why are so many company training programs so bad? The problem isn't the idea of training itself. It's that the old way of doing it is completely broken.
Yeah, most of them just don't work. The material feels like it's from 1995, the sessions drag on for hours, and it has nothing to do with the actual problems you face on a call. But the two biggest killers, you can't measure if it's working, and it's not there for you in the exact moment you need it. That pretty much makes it useless.
And let's get really clear on this. There's a huge difference between motivational hype and actual sales training. A rah-rah session might make you feel good for an hour, but it's not going to help you when a customer says, "I need to think about it." You got to ditch the feel-good stuff and get laser-focused on actual techniques for handling objections, for following up, and for closing the deal.
So, what happens when you don't train? Let's talk about the real price tag here, because this isn't some philosophical debate. Not training has a direct, painful impact on your bank account.
I absolutely love this analogy. Think about your sales skills like a saw. When your skills are sharp, because you've been training, you slice through objections. It's clean, it's efficient. But if your skills are a dull, rusty saw, well, you can still cut the wood, but man, it takes forever, you're sweating, and the result is a mess.
Being rusty just makes every single part of your job harder. So let's make this personal for a second. Forget about a big, complicated spreadsheet. Just think about the last deal you lost, the last time a customer threw an objection at you and you stumbled. What was that one single deal worth? That number, that's the immediate real-world cost of having a dull saw.
Okay, so we've established that the old way is broken. Now, let's build the solution. This is the new framework, the new rules for what actually works right now.
Here they are, 6 non-negotiable criteria. 1, you got to train daily. This isn't a once-a-year seminar. 2, it has to be delivered in short, bite-sized pieces, like 2 to 5 minutes max. 3, the whole point is to immediately help you sell more. 4, you have to be able to measure it. 5, you got to focus on your best people. And 6, it has to be available anytime, anywhere. This is a whole new operating system.
Now this next one, this is going to sound completely backward to most people. The standard thinking is to use training to fix your weakest performers. But the smart money does the exact opposite. You pour 80% of your training resources into your top performers. Why? Because making your best person 10% better gives you a way bigger return than trying to drag a bottom performer up to average. You sharpen your sharpest tools.
And it all boils down to what the source material calls the IV drip method. Love this visual. It's not about drinking from a fire hose at a weekend seminar. It's about a constant, steady drip of knowledge all day long. A quick video right before a call, a little refresher on an objection you're struggling with. It's about keeping your skills hydrated, moment by moment.
Okay, so theory's great, but what does this actually look like in practice? Let's walk through a concrete daily plan that you could literally start tomorrow morning.
This is the rhythm of a champion. Your commute isn't just a drive, it's your classroom. You start your day with a couple of quick, targeted videos to get your head in the game. You find little pockets of time to practice tough situations. And this is the game changer. You have help on demand right in the middle of a tough deal. Every part of your day becomes a chance to get better.
Now, what are you practicing? Not some vague motivational fluff. You are drilling the hard skills. You're mastering how to handle your top 5 objections until it's second nature. You're getting fresh ideas for who to call. You're perfecting your follow-up game. And of course, you are constantly honing your close. This quote really just says it all, doesn't it? People get hung up on the cost of training, but training isn't the cost. The real cost is that sale you didn't get, the commission you missed out on, the deal that slipped through your fingers because you weren't ready. Doing nothing is always the most expensive choice.
So as we wrap this up, I'll just leave you with this one question to think about. Look ahead to your day tomorrow. Look at the calls you have to make, the meetings you have scheduled. Is your saw sharp enough to cut through those challenges easily? Or are you going to be struggling with the dull blade? The choice is yours.
All right, let's jump right in. We're going to break down Grant Cardone's playbook for not just managing, but absolutely dominating your online reputation. You know, in a world where a single bad tweet can cause chaos, Cardone has some pretty aggressive, pretty intense ideas about how you seize control of the story. And it all starts with this one core idea. Cardone believes that your biggest problem isn't that you don't have enough money or that your competition is too tough. Nope. Your biggest problem, the one that can kill you before you even start, is obscurity. If nobody even knows you exist, how can they ever buy from you? It's really that simple. So let's really dig into the central problem that his whole strategy is designed to fix. It's a major shift in how most of us think about business, and it forces you to ask, what am I really afraid of? And this slide just lays it all out, doesn't it? We're all taught to worry about running out of cash, or the other guy stealing our customers, or our product not being perfect. But Cardone's message is crystal clear. If you have an audience of 0, none of that other stuff even matters. You have to be seen first. Obscurity is the ultimate silent killer in business, because you can't even get in the game.
Which brings us to the #1 weapon in this fight against being invisible. In Cardone's world, this isn't just a good idea or a suggestion. It is an absolute necessity if you want to survive today.
I mean, think about it for a second. 10, 15 years ago, if someone had a bad experience with your business, maybe they told a few friends. Now, they can tell thousands, even millions of people in a matter of seconds. So with that in mind, is being on social media really a choice anymore?
The answer is a loud, clear, resounding no. For Cardone, social media is not a hobby.
It's not something you do when you have a spare 5 minutes. It's mandatory. It's your storefront, your billboard, your town square, and your megaphone all rolled into one. You simply cannot afford not to be there. Okay, so you did it. You got known. People are paying attention. But guess what comes right along with that? Criticism. It is absolutely going to happen. You can't run from it, but you can be ready for it. So let's talk about that. And this is exactly why you can't just cross your fingers and hope for the best. It's just human nature, right? We're kind of wired to focus on the negative. An unhappy customer is almost always louder than a happy one. And the minute you start getting successful, you're going to attract jealousy and competitors looking to take you down. As Cardone puts it, it's an impossible avoidance. So you better have a plan. And this, right here, this is the pivot, the game changer. A negative comment is not a fire to be put out. It's a golden opportunity. It's a chance to show everyone watching how amazing your customer service is, a chance to really listen, and believe it or not, a chance to turn your biggest critic into your biggest fan. Okay, so that all sounds great, but how do you actually do it? How do you turn that angry tweet into a win? Well, here is the step-by-step playbook for turning that negative feedback into a massive win for your reputation. This is really the heart of the whole thing. The big takeaways here are, 1, you handle it personally. This isn't a job for your assistant. Your reputation is your job. And 2, you act fast. The speed of your response shows how much you care. And maybe most importantly, you take the conversation offline. You contain it, you handle it, you solve it. Let's really zoom in on this one, because this is where so many people go wrong. Getting into a public fight in the comments section is like pouring gasoline on a fire. You're just making it bigger and drawing more attention to it. The pro move, the strategic move, is to immediately take it private. Send a DM, pick up the phone. A simple, hey, I saw your post and I wanted to call you personally, can diffuse almost any situation. But, and this is a huge but, you have to know when you're dealing with someone who doesn't want a solution. Cardone calls these people vampires. Their goal isn't to get their problem fixed. Their goal is to create drama and drain your time and energy. They feed on conflict. Once you realize you're dealing with a vampire, the only winning move is to stop playing. Disengage. Walk away. Okay, so we've talked a lot about defense, right? Playing goalie. But the real way to win, the Cardone way, is to go on offense. It's all about building a reputation that's so positive, so strong, that it's practically bulletproof. This is how you build what's basically a fortress of positivity around your brand. You don't just wait for good reviews to trickle in. You go out and you hunt them down. You get video testimonials. You turn your happy customers into an army of advocates. You create such an overwhelming wave of good stuff that when one little negative comment pops up, it looks like what it is, an outlier. It just bounces right off the wall you've built. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This sounds like a lot of work. I don't have the time. And you know what? That's the #1 excuse. But Cardone's response is blunt. This isn't a time problem. It's a priority problem. Your reputation is one of your most valuable assets. It's a core part of your business, just like sales or accounting. It demands your commitment, not your excuses. So let's end with this one question. Right now, this very second, your online reputation is being built. The only question is, who's building it? Are you the one in the driver's seat, proactively shaping the story you want told? Or are you just a passenger, letting chance, critics, and your competitors decide how the world sees you? The choice is yours.
You know, selling can feel like you're constantly pushing a boulder uphill. But what if the biggest things holding you back aren't what you think they are? In this breakdown, we're diving into the core ideas from Grant Cardone's Sell or Be Sold to really tackle the toughest challenges in sales head-on.
So, just for a second, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Is it the fear of rejection? Is it dealing with the competition? Or maybe just the ups and downs of the economy? Right, whatever just popped into your head, trust me, you are not alone. These struggles are pretty universal, but the way the pros handle them, well, that's what separates them from everyone else.
So, how do we start winning? We're going to break it all down into 3 core areas. First, mastering your inner game. Then, conquering that daily grind. And finally, learning how to absolutely dominate the marketplace. Think of it as our roadmap from mindset to massive results.
Okay, let's start with the most important piece of real estate you'll ever own, the space between your ears.
Why? Because whatever happens out there with your clients is really just a direct reflection of what's going on in here. And all of it, starts with taking absolute 100% responsibility.
Now this right here, this is a total game changer. This idea completely reframes rejection. See, it's not someone telling you no, it's about you not yet finding the right way to get a yes. When a pro gets a no, they don't get all defeated. They just ask themselves, okay, what could I have done differently to actually earn their business? It becomes a puzzle to solve, not some kind of personal attack.
And this quote just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? You are not a victim of your circumstances, you are the cause of your circumstances. Just that one little shift in perspective, it moves you from this passive victim position to one of complete power and control over every outcome.
All right, but what about fear? You know that feeling? That pit in your stomach before a big call? That hesitation before you ask for the close? Well, according to this philosophy, fear isn't even real. It's just an emotion that we give all this power to. And there's only one antidote, only one way to destroy it. You have to move directly towards the thing you fear.
So the key is to actually start using fear as your compass. You feel that dread about making one particular call? Well, guess what? That's the exact call you need to make first. Because every time you take action on the things you fear, you build courage. See, courage isn't something you're born with. It's something you earn through action.
And the last piece of this inner game puzzle is your surroundings. You got to understand negativity is like a disease, and it is highly contagious. It will absolutely kill your focus, your drive, and your effectiveness. And here's why that's so critical. Clients will literally pay more for a positive attitude than they will for a great product. Think about that.
So you have to take a hard stance on this. Put up a sign. Make it known that you will not tolerate negativity. Not from your team, not from your family, and especially not from yourself. You have to treat it like trash that you wouldn't allow in your workspace, because that's what it is. This one simple rule protects your single most valuable asset, your mindset.
Now let's move on to our second pillar. You see how this builds, right? A winning mindset is like the engine of a supercar, but it's totally useless if the car never leaves the garage. Success in sales is a direct result of disciplined, consistent, daily action. No way around it.
Discipline is what creates stability in a world that feels totally random. And the source material is crystal clear on this. White space on your calendar is a complete disaster. You have to fill your schedule to the brim, master your routine from the moment you wake up, and just always be moving forward. This isn't about being a robot, it's about creating predictable success for yourself.
So, where does all this discipline pay off the most? Right here. Follow up. Most salespeople, they try once or twice, and then they just give up. And this, right here, is where the pros absolutely dominate. It takes serious commitment, a ton of creativity, and a level of relentless persistence that most people just don't have.
And if you think that sounds like an exaggeration, get this. In the book, Cardone talks about clients he followed up with for an entire decade before they finally bought from him. 10 years. That is the level of commitment we're talking about. It's about staying interested and being creative until the timing is finally right for them.
And ultimately, all this activity leads to a full pipeline. When your pipeline is overflowing with opportunities, you are never desperate. A canceled appointment isn't a disaster anymore. It's just an opportunity to call someone else. This is the ultimate position of power you can have in sales.
Okay, let's hit our final pillar. So we've mastered our mind. We've mastered our daily actions. So what now? How do we handle all those external forces, like the economy and our competitors? It's simple, really. We don't react to them. We create our own reality.
Just look at the difference in thinking here. It's night and day. The amateur sees a tough economy and they pull back, they get scared. The professional sees the exact same situation and thinks, perfect, and they push forward, grabbing up market share while everyone else is hiding. The amateur is obsessed with competing on price. The professional is obsessed with dominating on service and value so that price becomes a total non-issue.
And this really just says it all, doesn't it? The goal isn't to be a little bit better than the other guy down the street. No, the goal is to provide so much value, so much attention, and such an incredible level of service that you become the only logical choice for your customer. You literally make competition irrelevant.
So, when you put all three of these pillars together, something amazing happens. You stop being just a salesperson. You start the real journey of becoming a true professional.
And trust me, this isn't just a job title. It's a completely different code of conduct.
A true professional. They are completely sold on their product, their company, and themselves. Their motivation isn't just about the commission check, it's this genuine, deep-seated desire to serve and to help other people solve their problems. And because of that, they're respected, they're admired, they're not avoided. Nobody dislikes a true professional, it's the amateur that everyone resents.
And this is what it actually looks like in practice. A pro is willing to hear no over and over because they know it's just part of the process. They always ask for the order, multiple times if they have to. They focus on value because they know it always trumps price. They persist without being afraid, and they never, ever, ever stop training and preparing for their craft.
This final idea really captures the entire philosophy. See, pressure isn't a bad word, and persistence isn't being pushy. They are the essential forces that actually create value. Without them, all you're left with is a lump of coal. But with them, you can create a diamond.
So that brings us to the final question, the one you have to ask yourself. Are you going to be a passive participant in the market, just reacting to whatever it throws at you? Or are you going to take full responsibility, take massive action, and go out there and dominate your sector? The choice is yours.